Chapter 1505. Clang. The dazzling golden light was like the brightest light in the world. It shone on the entire beach and dyed the beach with a golden color. It was extremely beautiful. At this moment, a sword appeared in Noah's hand. It was a sword that was completely golden in color. There were mysterious runes engraved on the sword as a sword inscription. The sword existed only to cut down the god named Rama. The knowledge that flowed in Noah's mind turned into a sword that could cut through the godhead and appeared in Noah's hand. Buzz. At this moment, the Savior Divine Saber that was emitting a platinum light seemed to have sensed something and trembled slightly. It was a reaction that would only occur when it felt threatened. Looking at the Savior Divine Saber that was trembling, Noah subconsciously raised the golden sword in his hand and swung it at the Savior Divine Saber that was emitting a platinum light. Clang. The sword radiance turned into a flash of light, allowing the sword to cut through the space and slash at the Savior Divine Saber. Slash. Accompanied by the sound of flesh tearing, the golden sword slashed at the Savior Divine Saber violently. However, the Savior Divine Saber did not break. Instead, it was as if something had been cut off. The light on the sword suddenly stopped. At this moment, light particles suddenly flashed on Noah's body. The light particles turned into the shape of a white snake. Like a stream of light, it suddenly shot out and instantly disappeared into the Savior Divine Saber. Buzz. Suddenly, the Savior Divine Saber trembled violently like never before. Buzz, 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 buzz. The Savior Divine Saber could not stop trembling, causing a buzzing sound to reverberate in the air. The platinum light that was emitted from the Savior Divine Saber's sword started to flicker, causing the surrounding space to flicker. It was extremely strange. It was only then that Noah seemed to have woken up. He looked at the Divine Saber that was trembling non-stop and the light on the sword was flickering. His expression suddenly became gloomy. To be honest, Noah was not optimistic about this matter. Although Athena had calculated everything perfectly and even created a secret method to transform herself into an elf in a short period of time, how could it be so easy to assimilate with the blade of salvation? That was a divine blade that could even split a star. Even if Noah used the sword of speech to temporarily cut off the connection between the blade of valor and the blade of valor, Athena's condition was not good. In fact, it was very bad. In that case, even if this plan was feasible, there was no guarantee of success, right? Therefore, Noah was not optimistic about this matter. However, if Noah could think of this, how could Athena, the goddess of wisdom, not think of it? However, under such circumstances, Athena still proposed this plan and told Noah that the success rate of this plan was guaranteed. That was because Noah had neglected one thing. That was, would the blade of valor accept Athena's banishment? If the blade of valor did not want Athena to assimilate with the blade of salvation and become a sword elf, the blade of salvation would naturally resist Athena's assimilation and banish Athena instead. However, if the blade of salvation accepted Athena's assimilation, it would be a different story. Therefore, at a certain moment, the trembling of the blade of salvation suddenly stopped. Clang. The platinum light shone again and illuminated the entire beach. In the light, a series of platinum light particles slowly appeared and gathered to form an illusion. That illusion was the blade of valor. No. It should be Romo. You. Noah could not help but be stunned on the spot. Romo, on the other hand, turned around and looked at Noah. On his face, the fatigue that could be seen at any time in the past had completely disappeared. It was replaced with a trace of relief. After wandering the earth for countless years and fighting for countless years, today is finally the day of the end. With an indescribable expression, Rama gazed at Noah, as if he was filled with emotion and gratitude. He smiled faintly and said these words. Thank you. After leaving these words behind, Rama's figure gradually dissipated. In the end, he completely disappeared. Looking at the direction where Romo disappeared, Noah finally understood. That's right. The one who was most resistant to the idea that the hero who annihilated the Demon King would be resurrected was not the Demon King like Noah who was the target of the crusade, nor was it the humans who were dragged into the apocalypse. Instead, it was Rama who was tired of the constant battles. The person who hoped that the blade of salvation would not be resurrected the most was Romo. Therefore, Romo would not resist Athena's assimilation of the blade of salvation. Instead, he would accept Athena's assimilation with the blade of salvation and be banished. This way, Athena would not have the possibility of failure. It was because of this that Athena thought that the success rate of this plan was guaranteed. The result was just as Athena expected. Quietly looking at the direction where Romo disappeared, Noah could not help but mumble. Where will he go? The one who answered this question was none other than Athena. The souls of humans who have lost their bodies will enter the underworld, and the gods will return to the myths. Unknowingly, the divine blade of salvation had completely disappeared. Athena, who had transformed into a 12 or 13 years old girl, swayed her short silver hair as she slowly walked up to Noah's side. She stood side by side with Noah and also looked in the direction where Romo disappeared. Of course, the gods who have lost their bodies have ways to stay on the earth. However, that man will not want to stay on the earth, so he will choose to return to the myths. The god of disobedience was a god who had deviated from the myths and appeared on the earth. Killing such a god would only cause the god to lose his body on the earth and return to the myths. In other words, perhaps one day, the god who had been killed would once again appear on the earth as a disobedient. Including that man, Athena said bluntly. Perhaps one day, that man will once again appear on the earth and carry out his mission of annihilating the demon king. Who knows? Perhaps. Noah shrugged. When that time comes, if I am still in this world, I will free him again. Oh. Athena turned around and looked at Noah with interest. What if you are not in this world? Then I will let someone else do it. Noah suddenly smiled. The world is so big, and its history is so long. There will always be someone who can become the protagonist of this world and solve all the problems. You really dare to say that? Humans are just one of the many races in this world. Whether or not they can survive is still unknown. It is unrealistic for you to dream of someone who can dominate the world. Athena said with a happy expression on her face. However, since the heavenly child who is protected by the world has said so, I will believe in the possibility of humans. Noah could not help but smile as he turned around and looked at Athena. Athena also turned around and looked at Noah. The two of them stood facing each other and looked at each other for a long time without speaking. After a while, Noah spoke softly. You are now a sword spirit, right? After assimilating with the blade of God, I have indeed become a sword spirit. Athena's lips slowly curled up. Now that you have confirmed this, what do you want to say? Isn't that obvious? Noah said without hesitation. Since you are a spirit, then contract with me and become my contracted spirit. This sentence made Athena smile. Haven't you noticed that I have become your authority? Authority? Noah was stunned. That's right. Athena nodded. Although the process was a little complicated, you have indeed defeated Lord Rama. Pandora's great curse has begun to activate, and the authority you have obtained is the blade of the hero. Naturally, I, who have assimilated with the blade of God, have become your authority. Saying so, Athena smiled sweetly. In other words, whether I am willing or not, you only need a thought to contract with me. Furthermore, I can only contract with you. Athena. In the past, she was a goddess. Now, she had become Noah's contracted spirit. Thus, she was born. Chapter 1506. After Rama's return to the mythical world, the wind and fire auras that were constantly increasing in the world also tended to calm down. Sensing that the aura had calmed down, the grand ceremonies that were held together all over the world were also announced to stop. All the forces in the world of magic began to send people to confirm the extent of the damage caused by the appearance of the last king. As a result, although the grand ceremony to calm down the aura was held, there were still a few active volcanoes that erupted, causing quite a disaster. Especially the island country that Rama appeared in, a lot of the aura of the earth was involuntarily extracted by this brave warrior and turned into a land of death. At the same time, there were also many volcanic eruptions that caused some damage. Fortunately, only some buildings were damaged, and there were no casualties. It was considered a great fortune in the midst of misfortune. However, this also made many of the higher-ups in the world of magic and spells feel a sense of fear. One should know that Rama had only appeared for a short period of about a day. Moreover, the next day, all the forces in the world worked together to hold a ceremony to calm down the aura, delaying the increase of the fire and wind auras. Even so, such a degree of damage was still caused. One could imagine how much danger Rama would bring to the world if he were to continue living. Thinking of this, the higher-ups of the major forces felt very fortunate. No matter what, this incident was finally over in a way that was daunting but not dangerous. Although the major forces did not participate in the battle against Rama and the other gods of disobedience, the battle against the gods of disobedience was originally the responsibility of the god slayers. As ordinary humans, even magicians who were far beyond the reach of ordinary people could not participate in it. What they could do was to provide some manpower support in the battle between the god slayers and the gods of disobedience, as well as clean up the aftermath of the battle. Therefore, no matter which country it was, the major forces in the world of magic would be busy. At this time, perhaps only the god slayers who were in charge of the battle could be idle. In a room in the hotel, Luohao was sitting cross-legged on the bed, meditating while chatting with Noah. In the battle with the masked wind god, Luohao did not suffer any injuries. However, in order to defeat the masked wind god, Luohao used up a lot of curse power, causing the curse power to be in a state of deficit. This was not surprising. If Luohao had used the power of the great strength Vajra divine kung fu against the masked wind god to determine the victor, then the curse power consumption would not be so serious. However, the prideful sect leader Luohao had chosen to use the power of the dragon roar and tiger roar grand magic against the masked wind god. That was simply asking for trouble. No matter what, his opponent was the wind god. On the other hand, the great art of dragon and tiger's roar was the power to create storms through ballads. Against a god who could manipulate wind, using wind to fight was naturally not an easy task. In view of this, in the end, even though Luohao still obtained victory, it was extremely difficult, causing his curse power to be depleted. Left with no choice, Luohao could only stay here for the time being and meditate to recover the lost curse power. Rama? After confirming the true identity of the hero who annihilated the demon king from Noah, Luohao nodded as if she had expected it. It really is that prince. What's wrong? Noah was surprised. You knew it long ago? I only knew it after the battle with the wind god. Luohao nodded. In the battle, I uncovered the true face of the wind god. After learning that he was the ape god with white body hair, I guessed the identity of the hero. Because Rama liberated the weapons given by the gods in the heaven realm and presented the Manchala, people would naturally associate it with the Indian mythology that had a relationship with the Manchala. In Indian mythology, when the white-haired ape god was mentioned, the first thing that would come to mind was Hanuman, who helped Rama defeat the demon king Ravana in the Ramayana. In a sense, Hanuman's fame was even greater than Rama's. After all, he was the prototype of the protagonist's son Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven in the famous masterpiece Journey to the West in China. For Luohao, he was naturally the first god that came to mind. Since the masked wind god was Hanuman, then the lord that Hanuman followed was only Rama, right? Moreover, Rama was the seventh incarnation of Vishnu who was born to annihilate the demon king. This legend matched up with the hero who annihilated the demon king. In this way, Luohao easily guessed that the true identity of the hero was Rama. It was precisely because the exposure of himself meant exposure of his lord that Hanuman did not hesitate to conceal his appearance, not even speaking half a word, and had always pursued the doctrine of mystery. As long as one had some understanding of Indian mythology, it was not difficult to guess the hero's real name after seeing the Manchala and Hanuman's appearance. However, I didn't expect Prince Rama to have the god relic that can resurrect the sword god, Luohao said, somewhat annoyed. I've lost my composure for not being able to completely eliminate the enemy. If this were to spread, I'm afraid the people in the martial world would laugh at me, Luo Zuelian, for being a careless and reckless person. You're overthinking, Noah said, feeling a little speechless. Who would dare to insult you, Luo Hao? Even so, if this were to spread, my reputation as the unparalleled chief of the martial world would still be tarnished. Luo Hao thought about it seriously. Why don't we get to give an order to forbid anyone from mentioning this? Anyone who disobeys will have their tongues cut off as a punishment. Noah could not pretend that he did not hear anything. You're not allowed to give an order like that. Luo Hao frowned. Why? Noah rolled his eyes. Even if I were to tell you the reason, a girl like you who lacks self-awareness might not understand. Since you can't understand, then don't ask so many questions. If I tell you not to do it, then you're not allowed to do it. It sounded like an order. If someone else dared to say that to Luo Hao, they would have to wait for Luo Hao to fly into a rage. However, what Noah said made Luo Hao nod her head obediently. I understand. Since my husband said so, then let's do it. Noah finally understood. Although Luo Hao was a tyrant without a shred of self-awareness, she was not a bad person. Moreover, as a woman from China who had survived 200 years ago, Luo Hao was unexpectedly very traditional. She abided by China's 3 obediences and 4 virtues, and basically followed Noah's lead. Luo Hao would only listen to Noah's words without any reason. Since this matter has been settled, then there is no need for me to continue staying here. Luo Hao got up from the bed and turned her beautiful eyes to Noah. Husband, I'm preparing to return to Mount Lu. Return to Mount Lu? Noah asked. Now? I've recovered most of my lost curse power. I have no problem using God's celerity, Luo Hao said without hesitation. If that's the case, as a married woman, it's not good for me to show my face in public. You're quite open-minded. Noah laughed bitterly and looked straight at Luo Hao. Once you return, perhaps we won't be able to see each other for a while. With Luo Hao's personality, she would not come out after returning to Mount Lu. Then, unless Noah went to Mount Lu to visit Luo Hao in China, it would be very difficult for them to meet again. Moreover, Noah could leave this world at any time. Who knew when the next time they would meet again? Luo Hao did not care about this at all. She was even more straightforward than Noah. A real man should have ambitions everywhere. My husband is a peerless hero, an invincible king. You should travel the world and accomplish great things. There is no need to have any misgivings because of me. With that, Luo Hao stepped forward and straightened Noah's collar. No matter what, this concubine is still a king realm expert, so I naturally understand this principle. Therefore, husband, you don't need to worry about me. This concubine will always wait for husband's grand arrival at Mount Lu. At that time, let this concubine serve you well. After saying that, Luo Hao took half a step back and gave Noah a deep look. Then, she turned around and disappeared from where she stood. Seeing this, Noah sighed. I really don't know how to react to this girl. Chapter 1507. After Luo Hao left, Noah returned to his room. Kacha, with the soft sound of the door opening, Noah opened the door of his room and walked in. As soon as he entered the room, Noah was slightly startled. Because, in the room, on the table next to the sofa, there was a piece of paper. Noah stepped forward, picked up the paper, and read the contents. Since I've done what I need to do, then I have no reason to stay any longer. I'll leave the Holy Grail with you for the time being. If there's a chance, I'll find a way to get it Alexander Gascoigne. Seeing this, Noah understood. Yarek also left. Moreover, he left without a sound. This was quite like that guy's style. Presumably, the guy known as the Black Prince must have felt that this way of leaving was in line with his own aesthetics. However, it was just like what Alice had said. That guy Yarek seemed rational, but in fact, he was quite twisted in some places. It's not impossible to have a cool way of leaving, but before that, it's more normal to consider whether it's normal to barge into someone else's room without permission, right? Noah couldn't help but twitch his mouth, crumpling the paper in his hand. Sure enough, that guy seems rational, but in the end, he's still a reckless god-slaying demon king. If this sentence was heard by Yarek, he would definitely spare no effort to refute it, right? Unfortunately, in fact, Yarek had neglected the question of whether one could barge into someone else's room without permission. If this was used against him, it would definitely make that guy who thought he was very rational unable to say anything and feel aggrieved. The weakness is surprisingly obvious. Noah sighed. No wonder Alice could resist him. Saying this, Noah casually threw the paper ball in his hand into the trash can with great precision. Then, he removed 2 weapons from his back. They were 2 small swords the size of a palm. One was a steel sword that was completely silver. The other was an iron sword that was completely platinum. These 2 small swords were Noah's contracted sprites. This was especially true for the platinum-colored dagger, which Noah had only recently obtained. It was the divine blade that could even cut through stars and was known as the strongest divine blade. That was Noah's elven device, as well as Noah's authority. As for the specifics, Noah had yet to find out what had happened to the blade after it was assimilated by Athena. However, there was no rush. In any case, there would be plenty of time for research in the future. Now, there was another problem that made Noah very vexed. Thinking of this, Noah faintly sighed. He raised the small silver sword, looked at it, and said helplessly, "I say, Aster, you should be appeased by now, right?" While saying that, Noah couldn't help but glance at the back of his left hand. There, Noah's elven mark was imprinted. "I am the master's only contracted elf, you have nothing to do with it." Aster expressed her dissatisfaction with Noah's second contract. "Master already has me, the strongest sword elf. He doesn't need any elves with unknown abilities." "Oh. How can I pretend that I didn't hear that?" Athena's pride as the former goddess seemed to have been seriously provoked, and she immediately retorted. "Perhaps before I was born, you were the strongest sword elf in the elemental world, but now that I was born, only I have the right to be called the strongest." "You're just a half-assed elf," Aster said, unwilling to be outdone. "In front of the holy sword that can even kill the demon king, you're just an ordinary existence." "Indeed, I haven't been an elf for long, but no matter what, I was born after being assimilated with the divine sword that can even cut stars." Athena seemed to be so angry that she laughed. "A mere elf that can kill the demon king, there's no need to compare." Aster suddenly became silent. However, Noah could feel that the silver dagger in his hand began to tremble slightly. "I was the one who formed the contract with the master first, please leave my master, divine sword elf." At this moment, even the silver dagger in Noah's other hand began to tremble. "I have an indelible fate with this man, it's not something that can be compared to a mere first-come, first-served relationship. Even if someone should leave, it should be you, holy sword elf." The silver dagger began to emit a brilliant white light. "Master and I have already made a vow to be together for eternity." The silver dagger also began to emit a brilliant white light. "I have also made a vow to be with this man." This sentence seemed to have angered Aster. "If that's the case, then let's decide who is the one who can accompany the master for life." Athena accepted it without hesitation. "Very well, although I am no longer a goddess, I must let you know that my dignity is not to be violated." The conflict between the 2 contracted elves completely erupted. Chapter 1508. Clang Dash. Dazzling silver light and dazzling platinum light appeared in the air at the same time. Within the light, Noah's small silver sword and platinum sword simultaneously disintegrated into light particles and converged into human figures. Then, Aster and Athena simultaneously appeared within the light and landed on the ground, looking at each other. At this moment, there was no expression on the faces of the 2 girls. They were calm, and it could even be said that they lacked emotion. However, when the 2 girls looked into each other's eyes, one carried a sense of mystery while the other carried a sense of flirtatiousness. They looked rather charming. However, the oppressive aura emanating from the two girls was rather shocking, telling others just how serious Aster and Athena were. These two girls were actually prepared to fight. This was because the two elven girls used Noah's heart as a platform to converse when they transformed into their sword forms. As a result, even though the conversation between the two of them seemed to be long, it was actually just a split second of communication between their minds. Because of this, Noah didn't even have time to react before the two elves started fighting. This made Noah shocked and he hurriedly spoke. "Wait. Why did you two suddenly have a conflict?" "Master, please don't stop me," Aster expressionlessly said. "I have to tell this divine sword elf who is Master's true contracted elf." "Also don't stop me," Athena also expressionlessly said. "No matter what, I was once the queen of the realm of gods and the goddess of war. There is no reason for me to turn a blind eye to someone's provocation and challenge." "So you're prepared to fight? The winner has the right to speak," Noah said. "Do you have to fight and kill for no reason?" "Don't worry, Master." Aster was still expressionless. "It won't take long. I can deal with this elf immediately. I have never met a life form that dares to boast so shamelessly before the queen of the realm of gods." Athena's pair of flirtatious snake eyes stared closely at Aster. "Although I have lost all of my power as the goddess of earth in the past, I have assimilated with the divine blade that saved the world. Now, I am the divine blade, and the power of the divine blade is my power." With that, Athena raised her hand. Beep, beep, beep. Along with the crisp sound of an electric shock, a dazzling electric light flashed in Athena's hand. "This is," Noah said in surprise. "Lightning of salvation?" The true lightning of salvation is the incarnation of the countless weapons that the gods of heaven bestowed upon the heroes who annihilated the demon king. I am now assimilating with the divine blade, allowing the divine blade that was originally bestowed by the gods of heaven to become independent," Athena said with a calm expression. "Thus, the current lightning of salvation is just pure lightning. However, it is still the heavenly lightning transformed from the divine blade and is more powerful than ordinary lightning. I am not confident that I can control the power of the lightning of salvation. So, holy sword elf, don't die so easily." Before Noah could say anything to stop her, the electric light flashing in Athena's hand turned into a flash of light and shot out. In an instant, it pierced through space and struck Aster. Beep, beep, beep. The violent lightning immediately covered Aster's petite body. It moved back and forth on her body, constantly striking her with electricity. However, Aster's expression did not change at all in the face of the violent electric shock. She ignored the violent lightning on her body and said softly, "It's useless. It's useless. I have the highest resistance to curses. Even heavenly lightning can't harm me." "Is that so?" Athena looked as if she had expected this. Apparently, she had already guessed this outcome. "If that's the case, then I'll use a little annoying power." Suddenly, the flickering lightning on Athena's hand disappeared and was replaced by a whitish gold radiance. Wang! Amidst the trembling of space, the platinum light bloomed from Athena's hand and illuminated the entire room. Looking at the dazzling platinum light, Noah was really shocked. The light of salvation? Impressively, it was the light of salvation that could turn the essence of the earth into a blow that could split a star. Athena could even use the light of salvation? In the past, the hero who annihilated the demon king had extracted the essence of the earth more than once and turned it into a blow that could even split a star. Athena said self-deprecatingly. That was a power that could not be used without the support of the earth's essence. The hero was able to use it freely because he had absorbed the life of his servant girl. As the former goddess of the earth, after I assimilated with the divine blade, I was able to awaken this power and use it freely. This power was formed after taking the life of the goddess of the earth. To me, it's an absolute taboo. Athena's expression finally became a little cold. Therefore, Holy Sword Spirit, surrender to me now and I can still forgive you. Wait until I use this taboo power on you, then I'll really be angry. I won't surrender to you. Aster replied without any explanation. Master only needs me as his contracted sprite. You really don't know what's good for you. Athena snorted. Then let me teach you a little lesson. Just as Athena was about to release the light of salvation that could split a star, Noah finally could not stand it anymore. Stop. The light of salvation that blossomed in Athena's hands suddenly became sluggish. Without Athena's permission, it dimmed and disappeared without a trace. Athena frowned. But there was no other way. Who asked Athena to become Noah's authority? As Noah's authority, Noah's orders were absolute to Athena. Therefore, Athena was Noah's contracted spirit. Only Noah could form a contract with her. Whether she was willing or not, as long as Noah wanted to, he could use her power to form a contract with her. Compared to Athena, Aster, a proper contracted spirit, had more freedom. At that moment, Aster looked at Noah silently and said with an emotionless expression, Master, do you really want to form a contract with this divine blade spirit? Being stared at by Aster's mysterious eyes, Noah could not help but feel a trace of guilt. However, Noah shook his head and squatted in front of Aster. He stroked Aster's head. Apologies, Aster. I know you don't want to see me form a contract with another spirit other than you. But Athena is not only my contracted spirit, but also my authority. Even if we don't form a contract, she can't leave me. Aster fell silent. This young elf had always been emotionless. It was hard for others to know what she was thinking. But Noah knew that Aster was still dissatisfied and was not convinced by him. Why don't we do this? Noah said helplessly. As long as you listen to me obediently, then as long as it is within my power, you can make any request. No matter what it is, I will agree to it and help you achieve it. Can you stop being angry? Hearing this, Aster finally raised his head and stared at Noah. Any request? Any request is fine. Noah nodded. Of course, the prerequisite is that I can do it. How about it? Aster's eyes flickered. He looked at Noah and then at Athena. In the end, he nodded unwillingly. Noah was relieved. Athena glanced at Noah. Using rewards to appease your subordinates. It's not a very clever method, but it's not bad either. It's passable. Noah rolled his eyes. Who was the one who caused this to happen? At this moment, Noah's phone rang. Noah was startled. He took out his phone and picked up the call. After a while, Noah's expression changed. Chapter 1509. Hampstead. It was the location of one of the few high-class residential streets in London, England. In the corner of such a place, there was a mansion similar to an ancient castle. In the mansion, not only was there a vast courtyard, there were also 4 tall buildings and 4 tall towers. It was very luxurious. In Hampstead, there were many mansions like this. However, this mansion was undoubtedly the most special one among them. There was no other reason. Because the owner of this building was the daughter of Duke Godding's family, Alice Louise of Navarre. She was commonly known as Princess Alice. The former chairman of Greenwich's Sage Parliament was now a special consultant in this parliament. The reason was very simple. Because Alice was weak and sick, she could not continue to be the chairman of the Sage Parliament and could only retire. But even so, Alice still had the highest position in the Sage Parliament. Even the current chairman would not violate Alice's orders. Because of this, more than a month ago, Alice received Noah's protection. After her body recovered, many of the senior members of the Sage Parliament even advocated for Alice to be the chairman again and preside over the overall situation. It was said that even the current chairman had no objections and said that he would obediently give up the position. From this, it could be seen how high the prestige of this European princess in the Sage Parliament was. Unfortunately, Alice refused this proposal and did not take the position of chairman again. Her reason was like this. I have already sat on the chairman's seat once. Even if I sat on it again, it would not be interesting at all. Of course, the reason to the public became like this. I believe in the ability of the current chairman. I believe that he can continue to lead the Sage Parliament and go on the right path. So, please allow me to refuse. Many of the senior members of the Sage Parliament were amazed by Princess Alice's noble conduct. But those who really knew the truth looked at the senior members of the Sage Parliament, who praised Alice as if they were looking at a group of pitiful worms. Especially a certain black prince, after learning about this matter, he made such a declaration with a face of certainty. Compared to sitting on the chairman's seat again, that woman would definitely prefer to be able to see the faces of those who were fooled by her obedient girl mask. Because it would be more fun. In fact, that was indeed the case. However, the world is always ignorant. Therefore, the mortals could only be deceived by the princess. However, the princess was not in a good state. Buzz. Suddenly, a thick darkness emerged in front of the door of the mansion, converging into a door-like shadow. Noah walked out from the shadows and arrived at the famous high-class residential area in London. Almost at the same time, a group of servants dressed as maids rushed out from the interior of the mansion and lined up on both sides of the door. The door slowly opened. Then, a woman dressed as a secretary walked out. That was Alice's female officer, Elison. The last time Noah visited here, it was also this trusted aide of Princess Alice who came out to greet him. Elison bowed with a somewhat stiff expression. As expected of the strongest demon king who can even defeat the brave one. It only took a moment for him to come here from the distant Japan. How admirable. Although that was what she said, looking at Elison's stiff expression, she was definitely more in awe than in admiration. To this female officer, no matter how powerful the demon king was, he was still a demon king. The more terrifying the power, the greater the disaster if the demon king was angered. With this thought in mind, Elison was naturally fearful of the power displayed by Noah. And Noah was too lazy to continue dilly-dallying with Elison. That's all I have to say. Take me to Alice. I understand. Elison pushed the glasses on her face and said seriously. Then please come with me. Noah nodded. Thus, under Elison's lead, Noah stepped into the famous princess mansion for the second time. Gotcha, with the slight sound of the door opening, Noah walked into Alice's room for the second time. Welcome, Sir Noah. In the room, the most beautiful woman in Europe was wearing pajamas and lying on the bed. Her face was sickly pale. She leaned against a pillow and sat up, greeting Noah. This is the second time you've come to my room, but unfortunately, just like the last time, I can't get out of bed to greet you. Please forgive me. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. Last time, it was still understandable. But this time, you're clearly the one who caused this. Who can you blame? There's nothing we can do about it. Alice let out a faint sigh. If I don't release all the protective power in my body, let alone the whole world, I can't even extend my spiritual sense to the whole London. This is the only way. After the appearance of the last king, in order to control the wind and fire aura all over the world and prevent the apocalypse from coming, all the forces in every corner of the world joined hands and held a huge world-class ceremony that had never been done before and would never be done again. In that ceremony, in order to make everyone in the world cooperate with each other and make it possible to hold the ceremony together, Alice used her spiritual sense as a bridge to connect the spirits of all the forces in the world. In order to do this, Alice released all the protective power in her body that was used to restore her health, so the ability of her spiritual sense was greatly enhanced. Finally, she successfully connected the spirits of all the people in the world, making the ceremony a success. After this ceremony was destined to be recorded in history. At that time, Alice would also become a world-famous witch, not only limited to Europe, but also the princess of the world. However, the price she had to pay was not small. In order to make the ceremony work, Alice released all the protective power. As a result, the power of the protective power was exhausted, causing the princess who had finally recovered to fall down again, returning to her weak and sickly state. Those blessings were originally enough to protect Alice for several years, allowing her to continue living a healthy life even if she constantly used her spiritual senses during this period. Now, it was all used up in one go. It was conceivable that if there was no protective power, Alice would never be able to extend her spiritual sense to the whole world and connect everyone's spirits. After knowing that Alice had fallen, Noah immediately tore open the magic scroll of the portal, and instantly rushed from Japan to London. The person who called Noah was Alice. Noah still felt that he understood Alice's approach. After all, if she didn't do this, then it would be impossible for the world-class ceremony to be successfully established. However, Noah couldn't say that he didn't have any opinions about Alice falling down because of this. "I'll just ignore you like this," Noah murmured. "In this way, maybe I can let you lie at home obediently and not run around outside and cause trouble." "Wait. Wait," Alice hurriedly begged. "Please, don't do this, or I'll be bored to death." "Oh." Noah sneered aloud. "What does that have to do with me?" Lord Noah, don't tell me you intend to leave me to die," Alice asked pitifully. "You're such a gentleman, surely you won't leave a weak and sickly lady in the lurch, right?" "The problem is that a weak and sickly person is not a lady, but a wild girl," Noah said angrily. "Who knows if it will be a good thing to cure this person?" After saying that, Noah stepped forward, walked to Alice's bedside, and sat down. Looking at Noah, who was sitting on the edge of her bed, Alice's pretty face started to redden bit by bit. The reason why Alice called Noah was that she wanted Noah to give her another protective power. Then, there was no need to explain what needed to be done next. Chapter 15:10. In fact, before calling Noah, Alice had been worried about whether she should ask Noah to give her another protection. In addition to etiquette and skills, the careless Alice only had one thing that was most in line with the title of princess. That was, she didn't often have close contact with the opposite sex. As the most outstanding woman in Europe, it wasn't that Alice had never been in contact with the opposite sex in the past, but she had never had close contact with the opposite sex. The reason for this was that in addition to Alice being too noble and elegant, ordinary men couldn't get close to her at all. The most important reason was that this girl was weak and sick, and most of the time she was lying in bed. In this way, what opportunity did she have to have close contact with the opposite sex? Therefore, even if in other aspects, Alice was like a child pretending to be an obedient girl, but in terms of interacting with the opposite sex, Alice really had no experience in ambiguous aspects. Therefore, only in the face of the matter between men and women, Alice would show the most appropriate shyness of a girl. If Noah were to bestow a new blessing on him, it would mean that he would need to have intimate contact with Noah. Moreover, it was the most intimate kind of intimate action that only lovers would do. How could this not make Alice distressed? But at the same time, Alice's heart was beating faster. There was no doubt that Noah was the only person of the opposite sex who had the most intimate contact with Alice. In this case, it was naturally impossible not to leave some ripples in Alice's heart. In the end, Alice could only persuade herself with a red face. Anyway, I have already done it once. If I do it again, it doesn't matter, right?" With this excuse, Alice persuaded herself. However, when this time really came, a normal girl couldn't help but blush. In this regard, Alice was undoubtedly a normal girl. As a matter of course, Alice's cheeks naturally turned red as her heart raced. Seeing Alice's blushing face, Noah was a little amused. Compared with Alice, Noah's experience with the opposite sex was undoubtedly richer. Back then, Noah was also a pure and innocent young master who would be at a loss when a girl hugged him. Now, although Noah wasn't a veteran, he already had 2 fiancées, and even a self-admitted concubine. He was no longer pure. In addition, this was not the first time he had intimate contact with Alice. Noah calmly reached out his hand and held Alice's waist, holding the future princess of the world into his arms. Wait a minute." Alice couldn't help but cry out. She blushed and lowered her head, her arms supporting Noah's chest. As expected. "I still need some time to mentally prepare myself." You're only mentally preparing yourself now? Noah was speechless. Before you called me, you should have been mentally prepared, right? That's that, and this is this. Alice's face turned red as she tried to force logic. No matter what, you can't be anxious. Lord Noah, you need to be patient with a lady. Oh. Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Then how long should you wait before you're mentally prepared? This. Alice was speechless. Let me think about it. Hearing this, Noah was really speechless. Mental preparation required time. Even thinking about when to be mentally prepared required time. How much time would it take? When would he be able to protect her? Although it was true that he couldn't be anxious and that he should be patient with a girl, he also needed to be tough when he needed to be tough. Otherwise, it would only make things worse. In this regard, Noah was naturally more experienced than Alice, and he could see it more clearly. Therefore, Noah chanted the spirit of words without any hesitation. I will use these words to provoke the gods in the sky. Exercise this magic, chant this spell, and make everything in the world bow and kneel. Suddenly, in Noah's heart, the stone plate at the center of the cosmic sea suddenly turned and pointed to the incarnation of the priest. Noah directly turned the energy in the energy source in his body into divine power. He let the divine power flow and refined it into the power of protection, which rushed to his throat. When she heard Noah chant the spirit of words, Alice knew what Noah was going to do. She panicked all of a sudden. Wait. Lord Noah. Ignoring Alice's pleas and panic, Noah directly reached out a hand and pinched Alice's chin. With a gentle force, he opened Alice's small mouth. Then, as Alice panicked, he lowered his head and instantly captured Alice's lips. Oh! Alice let out a muffled groan, and her eyes widened to the maximum. In the end, her eyes were completely moist and filled with water vapor. Under such circumstances, Noah directly pried open Alice's teeth and captured the tip of the princess's tongue. Tasting the princess's lips and tongue for the second time, Noah also felt very refreshed. But Noah was not intoxicated by it. While tasting the princess's lips and tongue with enjoyment, he also instilled the refined protection into Alice's body. Oh! Alice once again let out a muffled groan. But this time, Alice's voice did not have the flirtatious feeling of association. Instead, there was only the discomfort of having her whole body filled with a powerful power. It was different from the last time. Last time, Noah's authority had just been obtained and was not mature. Even the cursed power in his body was only magic power. Although it was much more powerful than the average god slayer, it was still limited. This time, Noah's authority had already improved a lot after a long period of battle and self-enhancement. The power that drove the authority was divine power that could make the power of the authority even more powerful. In addition, the divine power was still endless, and the power output had also increased greatly under the strengthening of the sun's sovereignty. Naturally, compared to the last time, the difference could be described as heaven and earth. Therefore, the protection power that was several times or even dozens of times greater than the last time was poured into Alice's body, causing Alice's delicate body to bloom with an unprecedented bright brilliance. Chirp, after an unknown amount of time, the entangled man and woman finally released their lips. Noah and Alice, who was in his arms, looked at each other. One's eyes were unusually gentle, while the other's eyes were moist. Moreover, she was constantly panting, causing the atmosphere to have a touch of pink. Looking at Alice, who was gasping for breath, Noah said with a mocking smile. How do you feel? Feel? What does it feel like? The feeling of kissing? Or the feeling of her body being healed? Alice's pretty face became flushed again, but the sickly pallor was gradually fading away. That was the precursor to her recovery. This time, the protection I instilled in you should be able to protect you for more than 10 years even if you keep using your spiritual senses. Noah gently pinched the tip of Alice's nose. Don't mess around anymore, girl. After saying that, Noah did not linger on the warm and fragrant jade in his arms. He gently helped Alice lie down. As soon as Alice lay down, she immediately covered her face with the blanket in an attempt to completely cover her flushed face. Only a pair of eyes were exposed. She stared at Noah for a long time without moving away. Looking at Alice's moist eyes that made one's imagination run wild, Noah's heart could not help but skip a beat. Then, he let out a dry cough and pretended to be calm as he spoke to Alice. "By the way, Alice, if you've recovered, please help me tell Erica and Liliana that I plan to leave for another month." "Leave for another month?" Alice asked hurriedly without caring about her blushing face. "Why?" "I have something to do." Noah spread out his hands. "Now, Erica, Liliana, Wanlagu, and Hui Na are all busy helping their respective forces deal with the aftermath. I only had time to inform Wanlagu and Hui Na. As for Erica and Liliana, I'll leave it to you to help me inform them." "Is that so?" Alice asked helplessly. "Then, where is Sir Noah going this time?" "Why? Are you curious?" Noah raised his eyebrows, then suddenly smiled. "Then let's give it a try." Although no matter what, it was impossible for Alice to find it. Chapter 15:11. Whoosh. A scorching hot gust of wind surged like a tidal wave, stirring up waves of sand and dust that filled the entire area. In the air, Noah floated in the sand, standing against the wind. His eyes were filled with an indescribable emotion as he looked down. At this moment, what entered Noah's eyes was a black-gray land. That was magma rock. It was a rock formed by the condensation of magma after it cooled down. Based on the time in this world, about a month ago, before the magma rock was formed, the entire land should have been covered by a sea of magma. Noah knew this clearly. Because a month ago in this world, Noah was one of the culprits who destroyed the nearby area, causing the underground magma to erupt and drown everything in the sea of magma that flooded the surrounding area. The other culprit was the three-headed demon dragon, Azdakaha. Yes. Noah had returned. He had returned to Box Ting's world. In order to resolve the karma between him and the three-headed dragon, Azdakaha. In the world of the God Slayer, Noah had only stayed for about 10 days. However, no matter how long Noah stayed in the other worlds, it would be a month later in this world if he returned to the world he had stayed in the past. After a month's time, the sea of magma caused by the earth-shattering collision between Noah and the three-headed dragon had already cooled down, turning into a black-gray land made of magma rock. A month ago, there was a city called Glowing Flames City on this land. Now, that city had long since been reduced to ashes in the battle between Noah and the three-headed dragon. Not a trace of it was left behind. A month ago, the three-headed dragon that had engaged in an earth-shattering battle with Noah here had also disappeared without a trace. After all, the three-headed dragon could not have stayed here for a month. This oldest demon king had already broken out of his seal. Then, he would definitely take action in order to bring despair and fear to Box Ting, and then attack the various outer gates. Perhaps, because of the three-headed dragon's appearance, Box Ting had already fallen into an abyss of suffering and had completely turned into hell. What's more, even his companions in No Name had been killed by the three-headed dragon. That wasn't something impossible. Thinking of this, Noah's heart became more or less heavy. However, if he left this world and returned, a month would definitely pass in this world. This was a fact that Noah could not change. Therefore, it was useless to be anxious. The most important thing right now was to act quickly. Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath, and his eyes became sharp. Azdakaha, you'd better not do anything that will make people unhappy, or else, leaving such a sentence, Noah looked around, and then stopped in one direction. That was the direction of the realm gate. I wonder if the realm gate was destroyed. Even the glorious Flames City was destroyed, so it was not strange that the realm gate was destroyed as well. Noah could only pray that the realm gate was not destroyed. That way, Noah could return to the outer door of 2105380, and return to the base of No Name. In the next moment, Noah's figure directly swept out, turning into a stream of light, and flew towards the location of the realm gate in his memory. Whoosh! In the sharp sound of the air being torn apart, a stream of light cut through the sky, like a meteor, flashed across the horizon. As Noah flew forward, his eyes constantly swept the surroundings. Everything that entered his eyes was still the ground formed by black and gray magma. Back then, the collision between Noah and Azdakaha had caused a large amount of magma to erupt, forming an ocean that had even surged to the horizon, before finally stopping after being intercepted by a mountain range. One could imagine how wide the area was. At least, on the way here, Noah had not seen anything other than the boundless magma ground. At a certain moment, Noah noticed a trace of strangeness on the ground, and suddenly stopped. Then, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, moved his body, and shot towards the ground. Roar, 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 roar. A violent roar resounded on the black and gray ground. It was the roar of a few aliens. The aliens had a body that was like a white snake, but also like a lizard. There were 2 heads, and their eyes were like red jade, but they revealed a fierceness that was more ferocious than a beast. Impressively, they were the clones of the 3-headed demonic dragon, Azdakaha. Moreover, judging from the murderous aura and ferocious aura emanating from these clones, they seemed to be the first-generation clones that were born directly from the blood of the 3-headed demonic dragon. In other words, these double-headed dragons were all at the level of deities. These twin-headed dragons were roaring violently while charging forward like unstoppable chariots. Taking a closer look, in front of these double-headed dragons, there was a figure. No. To be precise, it should be said that there were 2 figures. The owners of the figures, one of them was a monster that was flying forward at an extremely fast speed. The reason why he was called a monster was because he was like a ghost. He did not have legs, nor did he seem to have a body. There was only a light black cloth draped over his body, and his body floated in the air like a ghost. He also held a lantern with a burning flame in his hand, and on his head was a huge pumpkin head that was 10 times the size of a human head. That shape was very similar to the image of a Western jack-o'-lantern. And on the back of such a jack-o'-lantern, there was a girl lying on her stomach. She was a young girl with 2 dark green ponytails, wearing a black and white gothic lowly skirt. She looked to be around 13 or 14 years old. However, the girl's expression was a little pale. Looking at the few aliens that were chasing behind her at an extremely fast speed, she shouted out in fear and annoyance. "Jack! Can't you think of a way?" Hearing this, the jack-o'-lantern, who was carrying the girl and flying forward at an extremely fast speed to avoid the pursuit of a few aliens, spat out a heavy and funny voice. "If it's only 1 or 2, I can still think of a way to deal with them. But with this number, although I can't say that there's no way, once I enter the battle, there's no way to take care of you. Xia, retreat is the priority here for the time being." But, the girl named Xia said with some unease. "At this speed, we'll be caught up sooner or later. Don't worry, we'll be able to escape back to the camp soon." Jack said comfortingly. "In short, Xia, remember to hold on tight. Leave the rest to me, Jack, ahahaha." The jack-o'-lantern monster made a humorous laugh, but that laugh seemed to be unusually empty in this situation. Roar, 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 roar. It was unknown if they were provoked by Jack's comical laughter, but the eyes of the 2-headed dragons became even more ferocious. They let out even more violent roars and suddenly increased their speed, rushing toward Jack, who was carrying Summer on his back. Under this kind of situation, the distance between the 2 became closer and closer. "Jack! Jack!" Xia shouted with a pale face. "Almost, they're about to catch up." Tisk. Jack finally couldn't maintain his humorous tone and said angrily. "How troublesome." After saying that, Jack's body suddenly surged with heat, causing the surrounding air to become somewhat distorted. Immediately, a burst of surging flames rose from Jack's body. Bang! The flames that rose with the wind shook the surroundings like an explosion, and in an instant, it covered the double-headed dragons. Roar, 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 roar. The double-headed dragons all let out painful roars, but the fierceness in their eyes didn't decrease, but instead increased. Thus, the double-headed dragons ignored the flames burning their bodies and suddenly rushed out of the flames. Oh no! Jack turned pale with fright. Ah! Xia cried out in alarm, and her face became pale. Just as the two-headed dragon was about to pounce on Summer's body, a cold voice suddenly rang out. Scram! Chapter 15:12. Get lost. When such a cold voice resounded in the space, a stream of light suddenly descended from the sky and flashed in front of the two-headed dragons. Dong! Accompanied by a dull explosion, the two-headed dragons were blasted away like rubber balls. They turned into arrows that left the bowstring and slammed into the dark gray ground. They were directly blasted into the ground by a huge force. Roar, roar, roar. The roar of a violent beast echoed in the air. Only then did Xia and Jack react. They raised their heads and looked in front of them. Then, the two of them saw it. They saw a back figure. A figure was suspended in midair. His robe was fluttering in the wind, and his posture looked unusually free and easy. Seeing this, how could Xia and Jack not understand? Someone had come to their rescue. Noah didn't turn around when he felt the gazes from Xia and Jack behind him. Instead of turning around, he asked as if he was talking to himself. Are you okay? Hearing Noah's voice, Xia and Jack looked at each other. However, before Xia and Jack could respond, a furious roar shook the area in front of them. Bang! Amidst the sound of an explosion, the few two-headed dragons that had been blasted into the black-gray ground burst open one after another, leaping out of the deep pits one after another. Roar, roar, roar. The two-headed dragons roared angrily. A pair of blood-red eyes stared at Noah, and violent emotions flashed in their eyes. Seeing this, Xia was shocked, while Jack hurriedly spoke. Your Excellency, those are the split bodies of the demonic dragon, and all of them are at the level of the first generation of deities. We have to leave here quickly. It's too dangerous to be entangled with them. However, Noah ignored Jack's advice. He stared at the double-headed dragons, and a sharp glint appeared in his dark and deep eyes. Very well, although they're not the original body, since they're bastards that were born from the blood of the lizard, let me vent a little. It was unknown whether or not they understood Noah's words, but the few double-headed dragons bared their ferocious fangs and suddenly roared. Without hesitation, they shook the ground and jumped up, pouncing in Noah's direction. Be careful! Xia and Jack both exclaimed. However, in the next moment, the two of them were shocked. Wang! In the midst of a tremor, golden ripples suddenly flashed in the space around Noah, and various relics such as swords, spears, halberds, and so on popped out. Bang 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 bang. Amidst the continuous sounds that sounded like gunshots, the treasures tore through the atmosphere and shot out like a machine gun, violently shooting toward the double-headed dragons that were attacking them. A few of the double-headed dragons did not even have the time to react before they were hit by the rain of relic. Poochie poochie poochie. Amidst the ripping sounds, the twin-headed dragons were bluntly pierced through by the treasures one after another. Moreover, they were sent flying by the force of the treasures. Like kites with their strings cut, they were sent flying. In the end, they were firmly nailed to the ground one after another. Thick blood flowed out from the bodies of the two-headed dragons. When the blood dripped to the ground, it merged with the dark gray ground, and it suddenly wriggled. In the next second, the wriggling ground turned into two-headed dragons that were one size smaller, and their eyes flashed with a bloody light. Noah narrowed his eyes when he saw that. He snorted coldly and raised his hand to pull out a huge sickle from a golden ripple that looked like a water wave beside him. A white mist filled the air on the sickle. It was cold air. It froze the surrounding air into ice particles, and it fell to the ground one after another. Holding the sickle that was filled with white cold air, Noah raised it high and swung it in the direction of the two-headed dragons. Whoosh! Along the path of the sickle, a surging cold wind suddenly blew, and it turned into a white storm. In an instant, it violently attacked the two-headed dragons and shrouded them. When the white storm disappeared, the two-headed dragons had already been frozen into ice cubes, and they were frozen on the spot. Whoosh 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 whoosh. All kinds of relics, such as sabers, swords, spears, and halberds, were suddenly shot, and one by one, they fell on the ice sculptures. Bang 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 bang. Amidst a series of explosions, the ice sculptures were directly shattered by the treasures one after another, turning into ice shards that filled the sky and fell to the ground. The whole place suddenly became quiet. The wave-like golden ripples that fluctuated around Noah suddenly shrank and disappeared between heaven and earth. However, the shock in Aisha and Jack's eyes did not disappear. Looking at the unusually tall figure that was floating in front of them, Aisha and Jack's hearts were in turmoil. How could the first-generation clone body of a deity be killed so easily? That was at least a 5-digit figure. To be able to kill such a group of god-level existences in an instant, only those who were ranked in the 4 digits could do it. The person in front of them was a 4-digit figure? The way Aisha and Jack looked at Noah had completely changed. Although there was only a difference of 1 digit between a 4-digit figure and a 5-digit figure, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. After all, in the box court, people with 6-digit and 7-digit figures were called the lower class, while 5-digit figures were the middle class. Only those with 4-digit figures and above were the upper class. In addition, the gap between the classes was huge, so the difference between a 4-digit figure and a 5-digit figure was imaginable. Of course, there was also a gap between the same number of digits. A god-level existence like the first-generation clone body of the 3-headed dragon was definitely at the top even among the 5-digit figures. In order to defeat such a clone body in the same number of digits, at least 4 or 5 people had to be gathered. If all of them were at the bottom of the 5-digit figures, it was estimated that even if 10 people were gathered, they might not be able to defeat a god-level clone body. From this, one could see how big the gap between the same number of digits was, let alone between the different number of digits. To be able to kill a group of god-level existences so easily, the person in front of them would probably be at the top even among the 4-digit figures, right? Noticing this, how could Aisha and Jack not change the way they looked at Noah? Of course, in addition to this, there was something else that shocked Jack. Those weapons just now. Jack's voice was a little hoarse. They should at least be bestowed weapons that simulate the godhead level, right? In various myths and legends, the bestowed weapons of the godhead level were famous. Except for a few, the rest were basically unique. In view of this, many people had replicated these godhead weapons. Some of the replicas were incomplete, but some were given a simulated godhead, expanding the spirit to be close to the real thing. For example, the Black Rabbit's Vajra replica was a replica of the Vajra replica. It was given a replica of the Vajra replica, and its power output was maximized. It was extremely close to the real thing. It was because of the existence of such a godhead weapon replica that Jack wanted to say that the bestowed weapons that he caught a glimpse of just now were all bestowed weapons that simulated the godhead level. As for the real thing, Jack did not dare to think about it. Because, how could such a thing exist? Noah, who did not know the shock in Jack's heart, slowly landed on the ground, turned his head, and looked at Aisha and Jack. Seeing the two of them staring at him blankly, Noah touched his nose and spoke somewhat tentatively. Are you guys okay? Only then did Aisha and Jack realize what was going on. Aisha looked at Noah's slightly handsome face, and recalled the scene where he killed the 2-headed dragon at the god level with just a wave of his hand, and her pretty face turned a little red. Jack, who did not notice the change in Aisha, introduced himself to Noah. Hello, I'm Jack from Will-O-Wisp. Thank you very much for saving us. Oh. Noah was a little surprised. Chapter 15:13. Will-O-Wisp. Noah had heard of this community before. It was said that it was a community that was established in recent years. Its base was located in the 678900 outer sect of the Northern District of Box Court, and it was ranked in the 6 digits. There were 3 reasons why this community was famous. 1. It was said that this community was the strongest community in the Northern District. Its leader was known as the strongest demon in the Northern District. He was a great demon born at the border between life and death. He could freely travel between the realms of life and death, and even had the ability to interfere with the realms. He was one of the best great demons in Box Court. 2. Although this community had enough fighting ability, it was not a community of fighters. Instead, it was a community that focused on manufacturing. They specialized in making all kinds of fine handicrafts and gifts. In terms of smelting technology, they were one of the best in the lower levels. They were very famous in the lower levels. 3. This community was dedicated to guiding the souls of the innocent who had lost their lives and saving them. Especially the souls of children who had died prematurely, they would adopt and take care of them. It had the feel of a charity organization. Due to the above 3 reasons, the community known as Will-O-Wisp was quite famous in the lower levels of the 6 and 7-digit society. Even in the 5-digit society, there were quite a few people who had heard of their name. For no name, who could only stay in the lower levels of the 7 digits, such a community was more or less necessary to know. Noah was no exception. Therefore, when he found out that Aisha and Jack were members of Will-O-Wisp, Noah was a little surprised and immediately had a good impression of them. You are the community that specializes in adopting the souls of the innocent children who had lost their lives, right? Noah suddenly smiled. I have been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. I have always wanted to say hello to you if I could meet you. Oh. Jack was a little surprised. Sir, have you heard of our community? Of course. Noah nodded. In the past, in order to adopt a group of innocent children, I established a guild, which is a community. I know how hard it is, so I have always wanted to meet you. So that's how it is. Jack was a little happy. It seems that Sir is also a person who loves children. That's great. It's not love, Noah said awkwardly. I just feel that I can't just sit back and do nothing. I'm being a busybody, right? No. How can this be considered meddling in other people's business? Jack said with a grin. With such noble conduct, even a saint cannot criticize you. If anyone thinks that you are meddling in other people's business, Jack will be the first to not forgive them. Although Jack said this sentence in a relaxed and joking tone, Noah clearly found a trace of determination and resoluteness in it. Obviously, Jack was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Right, let me introduce you to my companion. Jack floated to the side and spoke to the girl beside him. Love Summer. Yes. The girl named Aisha seemed to be frightened. She stood at attention and stuttered to Noah. I'm Will-O-Wisp's Asha Ignafartes. Nice to meet you. Noah smiled unnaturally. There's no need to be so nervous. Seeing the helpless and bitter smile on Noah's face, Aisha's pretty face actually blushed again. She lowered her head and softly agreed. Jack was a bit confused. Aisha, what's wrong? No, nothing. Aisha blushed and shook her head. I'm fine, oh? Jack looked at Aisha's blushing face and thought of something. He suddenly snickered. Could it be, don't laugh like that. Aisha glared at Jack angrily. And don't laugh at me. Good, Jack was like a father who was gratified to see his child grow up. He held the lamp and floated up and down in the air. He seemed to be in a good mood. I'm just a pumpkin. Please don't mind me. Ahahaha. Jack. Aisha's angry and shy voice sounded around him. Seeing the 2 comrades from Will-O-Wisp suddenly quarreling in front of him, Noah smiled bitterly. He then took a deep breath and became serious. The 2 of you, just now, those were the clones of the 3-headed demonic dragon Az Dakaha. Since those clones are here, can I assume that the 3-headed demonic dragon Az Dakaha is also nearby? Noah's words made Aisha and Jack stop talking at the same time. They looked at Noah with astonishment. What? Jack was extremely surprised. Could it be that Your Excellency doesn't know about the three-headed demonic dragon Az Dakaha's current situation? The humans breaking out of the seal in the final trial was undoubtedly a disaster for the box court. It was definitely more than enough for such a big matter to spread throughout the entire box court in a month's time. Under these circumstances, it was really surprising that there were still people who didn't know about Az Dakaha's situation. My apologies. Due to some reasons, I left the box court and only returned today. Noah looked at Jack very seriously. So, could you please tell me what the current situation is? So it's like that. Jack suddenly understood. Of course, no problem. At this point, Jack's tone changed again. However, it's not very safe here. New clones could appear at any time. Your Excellency, please follow us to the camp first. We'll talk on the way. Camp? Noah was slightly startled. In order to deal with Az Dakaha, the rulers of the East, South, and North regions and various communities have gathered here to form an alliance to fight against the oldest demon king. Jack explained. Currently, the rulers and communities have all gathered in a city. That is our camp. Is that so? Noah finally understood. I understand. Then let's talk on the way. Jack nodded with a chuckle. Only Aisha secretly glanced at Noah from time to time. Her pretty face blushed from time to time, looking like a young girl who was in love. Presumably, Noah didn't expect this either, right? A hero saving a beauty was indeed the best way to capture a girl's heart. A month ago, the human's final trial, Az Dakaha, broke out of the seal and sunk the entire Blazing Flame City into a sea of lava, completely destroying it. Blazing Flame City was the base of Salamandra. However, Salamandra was blown out of Blazing Flame City by the tornado that Az Dakaha casually created when he broke out of the seal. Moreover, before that, Salamandra had already dismissed all the residents of Blazing Flame City. Therefore, miraculously, Az Dakaha's escape did not cause a huge casualty in the first place. According to Salamandra, it was because a human named No Name had stood up and blocked Az Dakaha that the residents of Salamandra and Blazing Flame City were able to evacuate in time without being hurt. However, that human hero did not come out unscathed in the end. At that time, although Salamandra was blown away and was not in Blazing Flame City, there were many people who witnessed the battle between that human hero and Az Dakaha. It was said that the battle between the two caused the sky to fall and the earth to split. It destroyed Blazing Flame City, destroyed the earth, and ignited the underground magma, causing the sea of lava to be born. Everything in the vicinity sank into the magma and was destroyed. In the end, when everything calmed down, that human hero did not appear again. Only Az Dakaha, who was seriously injured and whose heart was exposed, flew out of the sea of lava. Therefore, everyone thought so. The human hero who blocked the oldest demon king had been sacrificed. Sacrificed? Noah was speechless. Chapter 15-14. During the battle with Az Dakaha, Noah was attacked by the resurrected three-headed dragon due to his carelessness. As a result, he was severely injured and fell into the sea of lava. At that time, because it had returned to Noah's hands, the world fragment that Noah had dug out from Az Dakaha's body along with his heart had become active. Using the factor of returning to Noah's hands, Noah had triggered the condition to return to the between worlds. Because of this, in the end, Noah did not lose his life in the sea of lava. Instead, he was transported to the world of the God Slayer. In that case, naturally, no one would discover Noah's whereabouts. Naturally, it was not strange to interpret Noah as a sacrifice. However, Noah did not expect that in a month's time, he would become a so-called human hero. Therefore, Noah was really speechless. Seeing Noah's speechless expression, Jack thought that Noah felt that it was a pity and could not help but sigh. I can understand what you're thinking. A human hero who was able to severely injure Az Dakaha to the point of exposing the weakness of his heart actually died in a battle with the oldest demon king. It's truly a pity. That's right. Ai Xia nodded in agreement. If that hero did not challenge the demon king alone, as long as we work together with the current rulers, we might be able to defeat Az Dakaha. It's not impossible to defeat Az Dakaha, Noah replied almost reflexively. The real problem is whether we can defeat the human in the final trial. That's the real problem. Jack was puzzled. What does that mean? It means that although Az Dakaha is very strong, it is not impossible to find a way to defeat him in the box, Noah said. The problem is that even if we defeat him, he'll be resurrected immediately. If we don't solve the mystery of why the lizard transformed from an evil god in the fire worship sect into a human in the final trial, we won't be able to defeat him at all. In fact, it was precisely because of this that Noah felt troubled. Originally, Noah wanted to continue exploring the riddle of the final trial in other worlds. However, he later realized that it would not work at all. The concept of the final trial only existed in this world. In the other worlds, Noah couldn't find a single clue about the final trial of the human race. Since there was no clue, how could he solve the riddle of the final trial? It was because of this that Noah wanted to return to this world. Only in this way could he hope to solve the riddle. Of course, Ai Xia and Jack did not know about this. Therefore, when they heard Noah's words, they looked at each other in dismay. Only then did Noah notice the difference between the two of them. He laughed dryly and changed the topic. Then, after that human hero sacrificed himself. What happened? After that, in order to recover from his injuries, the three-headed dragon Az Dakaha did not immediately attack the box court. Instead, he hid deep in the mountains and attempted to recover from his injuries, Jack explained. However, at that time, Salamandra had already spread the news that Az Dakaha had broken out of his seal and asked for help from the South and East districts. Therefore, the rulers of the South, East, and East districts all gathered together and called for a community that had the ability to suppress the demon king to discuss countermeasures. However, if the final trial of the humans was so easy to deal with, then the entire box court would not be so fearful of him. Hence, before they could come up with a countermeasure, Az Dakaha, who had fully recovered from his injuries, once again appeared. He slaughtered his way into the nearest outer door and launched a terrorist attack. In order to prevent this tragedy from happening, the rulers of the various districts immediately joined forces with the communities of the various districts to fight Az Dakaha. That battle could only be described as tragic. Countless people fell one after another under the three-headed dragon's fangs and claws, completely losing their lives. In the end, even if they joined forces with the rulers of the eastern, southern, and northern regions, as well as the experts of the various large communities, they were still unable to shake the most ancient demon king. Under Az Dakaha's violent attacks, they suffered heavy casualties. Just as everyone was about to face despair and fall under Az Dakaha's demonic claws, White Yiksha, who was known as the strongest ruler of the hierarchy, finally stood up. In order to protect the future of the box court from Az Dakaha's hands, White Yiksha resolutely used his authority as the organizer. The rulers of the hierarchy all had the authority as the organizer. However, White Yiksha's authority as the organizer had always been prohibited from being used. That was because White Yiksha's authority as the organizer was very special. As the ruler of the laws of heaven and earth in the past and the center of the universe for a long time, White Yiksha's spiritual lattice had been shrinking with the gradual negation of the theory of heaven and earth. His power was only at the level of a sun god, but that was at best a result that could be obtained within the scope of human observation. The spiritual lattice of the theory of heaven and earth existed in a location that could not be found even if all the time in human history was exhausted. It was something that could only be proven after reaching the end of the stars, the end of time, and the end of the universe. Because of this, even if humans were gradually negating the theory of heaven and earth, White Yiksha could still preserve a certain degree of spiritual lattice. Otherwise, if the theory of heaven and earth was completely negated, White Yiksha might not even be able to maintain his existence, let alone his spiritual lattice. And White Yiksha's authority as the organizer was to infinitely expand the spiritual lattice of the theory of heaven and earth at the end of the universe, imprisoning the target in the white night horizon that had no exit. That way, as long as White Yiksha existed there, the imprisoned target would never be able to escape. In other words, White Yiksha was prepared to sacrifice himself and take Az Dakaha with him to be sealed at the end of the universe forever. What? Noah was shocked. White Yiksha took Az Dakaha and sealed him forever. That should have been the case. Jack laughed bitterly. But it didn't succeed in the end. Az Dakaha's strength far exceeded our imaginations, and even White Night King's imaginations. Back then, almost everyone who had participated in the battle and survived had seen an unbelievable scene. The human named Az Dakaha had erupted with astonishing willpower before he was sealed in the final trial. The three-headed dragon had a simulated star map, another cosmology, named Avesta. That was the simulated star atlas, another cosmology, that could imitate the target's cosmology, obtain all the properties of the target except for humans and the sect of fire, and superimpose them on oneself. It could also be used as a mirror to offset the power of the imitated target. As for the simulated star map, another cosmology, it could only imitate the cosmology and not the organizer's authority. However, before he was sealed by White Yiksha, Az Dakaha had exceeded his limits. He had broken through the limitations of Avesta's simulated star map, another cosmology, and imitated White Yiksha's organizer's authority. As a result, White Yiksha's organizer's authority was cancelled out. Of course, it wasn't all of it. This kind of breakthrough was just a flash in the pan, disappearing in an instant. As a result, Az Dakaha's simulated star map, another cosmology, only cancelled out most of the effects of White Yiksha's organizer's authority. He was not sealed to the end of the universe, but was sealed underground. Is that so? Noah muttered with mixed feelings. Sealed? Unfortunately, it's not a permanent seal, Jack said solemnly. Because most of the effects have been cancelled out, it's only a matter of time before the demon dragon breaks out of the seal. According to the rulers of the various classes, the demon dragon will reappear in the world in at least a month and at most 3 months. Therefore, the rulers of the various classes have been staying in nearby camps and haven't left. Noah's eyes flickered, and then the corners of his mouth curled up. Very good, that's enough. Chapter 15:15. Perhaps it was because of the approaching storm, or perhaps it was because of the all-out war during this period of time, but the entire sky was shrouded by a thick layer of dark clouds, making it look extremely gloomy. Under such a dark sky, an ancient castle was suspended in the air like a floating island. It seemed to be directly standing on the invisible ground and was not affected by the strong winds. Looking at the ancient castle that stood in the air, Noah's eyes were more or less stunned. Because, regarding the ancient castle, Noah was not unfamiliar at all. That was the city of vampires that Letitia used to own. In the past, it used to be the base of the vampires known as the Knights of the Box Court. Later, it was occupied by the Demon King Letitia and became the capital of the Demon King Dracula. It was feared by the people of the Box Court until Noah liberated the vampire castle not long ago. Looking at the ancient castle, Noah hesitated for a moment, and then asked Jack, who was flying with Ai Xia on his back, somewhat uncertainly. That is the camp of the East, South, and North regions rulers and the large community alliance. That's right. Jack did not seem to notice Noah's strangeness and nodded. That was originally the property of the Demon King Dracula. A month ago, the human hero who sacrificed himself in the battle with Az Dakaha defeated the Demon King in the Game of Grace. The Demon King then became the subordinate of the human hero. Since that human hero sacrificed himself, the subordinate Demon King provided this ancient castle for the people of the 3 regions to use. Our will-o-wisp is also currently stationed there. Ai Xia straightened her chest and said with some pride. Even our leader is there? Your will-o-wisp's leader? Noah looked curiously at the ancient castle that was suspended in the air. The rumored strongest demon in the North region, I'm looking forward to meeting him. A demon that would make the community adopt the souls of innocent children. Noah was indeed quite curious. However, this sentence actually caused Sia and Jack's expressions to become strange. What's wrong? Noah was slightly startled. Is there something inconvenient about your leader? No. Sia said hesitantly. That's not it. How should I put it? Even Jack seemed to be troubled as he scratched his pumpkin head. Our leader is probably a little different from what you think. Different? Noah was getting more and more confused. However, seeing how Aisha and Jack were stammering as if they didn't know how to describe it, Noah tactfully didn't continue to ask, and instead changed the topic. If that's the case, let's go in. That's true. Jack chuckled. If we let, of the Demon King, Dracula said, of course, of the Demon King of the Demon King, of course, of the god of the demon of the world. After all, Dakahas, another cosmology, could imitate the cosmology of all species other than humans, and the gods of the Zoroastrianism obtain their powers, and even cancel out their powers. Under such circumstances, the addition of a human with a 4-digit level of power who would not be imitated by Avesta would be of great help to the alliance that wanted to deal with Dakaha. Therefore, even Aisha felt a little excited. Noah could naturally understand what Aisha and Jack were thinking, but he didn't say anything. He just smiled faintly, and together with the other 2 members of Will-O-Wisp, flew towards the direction of the ancient castle. When Letitia was still the Demon King and occupied this ancient castle, everything in the ancient castle seemed to have been buried for a long time and had not been seen for a long time. Ancient traces were left everywhere, just like ruins. But now, in this ancient castle, there were many fully armed people on the streets, occupying the surrounding buildings one by one. It was very lively. And on the buildings that were obviously occupied by people from different groups, there was a flag that fluttered in the wind. Those flags were naturally the flags of the various communities. These are the communities that came from the east, south, and north regions to provide support. On the way, Jack floated in the direction of the city center while explaining to Noah, who was walking beside him and looking around. Although they are basically all communities with less than a 4-digit number, there are also communities like Will-O-Wisp that are mainly manufacturing, but have strong combat power. Everyone knows that Dakaha's appearance will bring an unimaginable disaster to the city, especially the middle and lower levels. Even if everyone worked together, they wouldn't be able to resist, so everyone worked together. Jack pointed in the direction of the city center. And over there, the rulers of the east, south, and north regions are stationed. Hearing this, Noah raised his eyes and looked forward. He saw that in the center of the ancient castle, there was a splendid building. That was the throne hall where Letitia used to be. At the top of the throne hall, 3 flags fluttered in the wind. The ruler of the east region, the community where the white Yiksha was 1,000 Eyes. The ruler of the north region, the community where Shadora was Salamandra. And the community where the ruler of the south region was Dragonhorn Griffin Lion. The rulers of the east, south, and north regions were all gathered together, letting the flags of their communities flutter at the highest point, showing an indescribable sense of brilliance. Seeing this scene, Noah could finally understand. A flag, to a community, how important was it? People could only gather power under a flag. Without a flag, there was no pride to speak of. While Noah was staring at the flags fluttering in the wind, Aisha suddenly said, "Actually, in the throne hall, there is another community stationed there." "There's another community?" Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he also suddenly spoke. "Is that community no name?" Aisha and Jack were both stunned, their expressions revealing extreme surprise. Seeing Aisha and Jack's reaction, Noah seemed to have gotten the answer, and suddenly smiled. "If that's the case, let's go to the throne hall." Leaving this sentence, Noah walked in the direction of the throne hall. Seeing this, Aisha and Jack finally reacted, and hurriedly followed. Just as Noah was heading to the throne hall, in the vast hall of the throne hall, a round table was placed in the center, and there were many seats on the side. However, there were very few people sitting on the seats, only 4 people. One was a young girl with dark skin, dressed in a dancer-style costume, and a pair of dragon horns on her head. She had the charm of a mature woman. The other was a young girl with a ponytail, with a black hair accessory tying up her pure white hair, wearing a white dress and exquisite silver armor, and wearing a black and white ball mask that covered the upper half of her face. Apart from these 2 young girls, the other 2 were people that even Noah recognized. One was the leader of Salamandra, Shadora. Behind her, Mandora stood there expressionlessly like a guard. The other one was Ren. His face was more or less stiff, as if he was very nervous, but he still insisted on sitting there. Behind Ren, there were several people standing in a row. Surprisingly, they were Jiu Yufei, Haruhabuyao, Hei Tu, Letitia and Pest. As for 16 Nights, she was not present. There was a heavy atmosphere in the air. This heavy atmosphere seemed to make Ren's body stiffen even more. Noticing Ren's abnormality, Letitia seemed to be unable to continue watching, and said in a low voice, "Ren, pull yourself together, you are our leader." Hearing this, Ren could not help but bitterly smile. It was because he was the leader that he was nervous. Chapter 15-16. Frankly speaking, in terms of the community's reputation and strength, as the leader of No Name, Ren did not have the qualifications to sit with the other 3 people. After all, other than Ren, the other 3 people sitting here had extraordinary identities. Needless to say, Shadora was the leader of Salamandra, the ruler of the North District. Moreover, the community's base was in the 5 digits, which was much stronger than No Name. The girl dressed as a dancer was the ruler of the South District. The speaker of Dragon Horn Griffin Lion was also in the 5 digits. As for the remaining girl dressed as a knight, her background was even above the other 2. It was mentioned before that in the box, the sun's sovereignty that represented the most Asura gods and Buddhas and had the most important position was divided into 24. Among them, as the star's spirit of the sun, the demon king White Yiksha, who had once represented the heavenly movement theory to dominate all the universes and become the center of all cosmology, only held 14 of them. Meanwhile, of the remaining 10 sun sovereigns, 6 were held by someone who similarly had the deepest connection to the sun. Even though she was a 3-digit number, she was an exceptional existence, able to stand on equal footing with the White Yiksha, someone who was revered as a queen by others. That queen was called the Queen of Halloween. This night was the favorite of the Queen of Halloween. In other words, this girl was the subordinate of the Queen of Halloween, who was an exceptional existence even among the 3 digits. This time, it was the Queen of Halloween who sent this girl as her representative to participate in the crusade against Az Dakaha. Therefore, even the 2 rulers of the 5-digit ranks did not dare to slight the Queen Knight. Compared to these people, how could No Name, who had no flag and no name, and whose base was at the bottom of the box, have the qualifications to sit with them? Therefore, Ren felt nervous. Not knowing if it was because she saw Ren's nervousness, the girl dressed as a dancer smiled sweetly. "Don't feel restrained, Ren. You have the qualifications to sit here. Sister Sarah is right, Ren." Shadora also showed an innocent and cute smile, but then she became serious again. "This castle belongs to a member of your community, and a member of your community sacrificed himself to protect Salamandra and the residents of Blazing Flame City from Aziz Dakaha. Based on this alone, as the leader, you can sit here." Sandora's words made Ren's stiff expression disappear, replaced by a gloomy expression. It wasn't just Ren. Even Jiu Fei Niao and Kasuga Biao's faces turned dark. Black Rabbit's eyes turned red, and she almost cried. Only Letitia and Pest raised their heads to look at Shadora. "Didn't I already say that?" Letitia said with certainty. "Master is not dead. How could that fellow possibly die?" Pest curled her lips. "The subordination contract between me and Letitia still exists. This is the best proof. I've said this many times, haven't I?" Sarah, the leader of the Southern District, opened her mouth slightly but didn't say anything. Actually, this didn't prove anything. Although Letitia and Pest firmly believed that Noah was still alive if the subordination contract in their bodies still existed, it was also possible that the subordination contract had been transferred to someone else. That wasn't anything strange at all. In the box court, the game of favor was everything. Regardless of whose subordination contract it was, if the subordination contract was used as a wager or prize in the game of favor, the subordination contract would be transferred to the victor. Of course, Noah wouldn't use Letitia and Pest as a wager or prize in the game of favor and then lose the two girls. But apart from this, there was another method of transferring subordination contracts. That was, when the master belonged to a community, once the master died, the subordination contract might be automatically transferred to the community that the master belonged to, and the master would become the possession of the community. Letitia and Pest might very well be in such a situation. Thus, even if the subordination contract between them still existed, it wouldn't prove anything. Because of this, apart from Letitia and Pest, Joe Yuasuka, Kasuga Yari, Black Rabbit and the others all believed that Noah had met with a disaster. Because of this, the already heavy atmosphere in the room became even heavier. Ren had no choice but to pull himself together and become serious. Everyone, thank you very much for allowing me to sit together with you. This is something that my companions fought for me. Thus, I will do my best to make myself useful. Please begin the meeting. Sarah and Shadora both smiled and nodded. Even the Queen Knight raised her head. Then, let me first report the current situation to everyone. Sarah looked around. Not long ago, in the battle between us and Az Dakaha, although the Eastern District's hierarchy ultimately sealed the Demon King and brought the battle to an end, there were two repercussions from that battle. One is that because Lord White Yiksha used his authority as the organizer to seal the Demon King, once he leaves the location of the seal will automatically be undone. Thus, he can only stay there and can't discuss countermeasures with us, Sarah said. The other is that in the battle with the Demon King, although we didn't defeat him, we made him bleed a lot and split him into many clones. Those clones have been wreaking havoc nearby. Speaking up to this point, Sarah took out a map and spread it on the table. I've already asked many communities to send people outside to investigate the situation of the Demon Dragon's clones. Now, apart from the area that Will-O-Wisp is in charge of in the North District, the other communities have confirmed the location of the Demon Dragon's clones. Everyone immediately turned their gazes to the map. At this moment, the Queen Knight spoke. Do you plan to destroy these clones? That's right. Sarah immediately nodded. The threat of the Demon Dragon's clones is already very great, especially the first generation, which is at the level of a god. If they are allowed to wreak havoc and divide, perhaps, the incident of the East District being attacked by a large number of Demon Dragon's clones will happen again. Everyone suddenly fell into deep thought. 200 years ago, in the battle to seal Az Dakaha, it was because the ruler of the hierarchy at that time did not destroy the clones that split from the three-headed dragon in that battle that caused those clones to spread to every corner of the city and continue to multiply. In the end, it led to the Demon King's alliance using them to attack the East District, forcing White Yiksha to return the divine persona and restore his strength at his peak to face the attack. If it was not White Yiksha, but another ruler of the hierarchy, it would be almost impossible to stop such a two-headed dragon army. In order to prevent the same thing from happening again, Sarah made this suggestion. And this suggestion was immediately echoed by the others. I agree. Ren immediately expressed his position. It's too dangerous to keep those clones. I agree as well. Shadora nodded her head. We can't let the same threat appear again. Although the Queen Knight did not express her position, she tacitly agreed. This made Sarah smile in satisfaction and strike while the iron was hot. Then, let's discuss which clones we and the rest of the community should be responsible for annihilating. Everyone naturally had no objections and nodded in agreement. At this moment, a person rushed in a panic. Lady Sarah. Not good. This voice caused everyone's hearts to tighten involuntarily. Could it be that Az Dakaha broke the seal early? The next moment, what the person said made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Lady Sarah, Lord Griffith of the Two Wings had a conflict with someone at the entrance. Conflict? Sarah was stunned. Yes. The person glanced in the direction of Ren and the others. Moreover, the other party claims to be a member of no name. This time, it was Ren and the others who were stunned. Chapter 15-17. It was just like what the person who reported to Sarah and the others said. At the entrance of the throne hall, Noah and the person called Griffith had a conflict. No. It was not right to call him a person. The person called Griffith had a pair of wings on his back. He was clearly not a human being. Moreover, this person brought 2 followers and blocked the entrance of the throne hall. He looked at Noah with a sneer, which made Noah frown. Hey! Aisha shouted in indignation. Why are you stopping us? Griffith glanced at Aisha. When he saw Jack, who was carrying Aisha, he spoke in disdain. I was wondering who it was. So it is the little girl from Will-O-Wisp and the Clown. This has nothing to do with you. If you know what is good for you, then hurry up and leave. You. An angry expression appeared on Aisha's face. Just as she wanted to say something, she was interrupted by Jack. Ahahaha, perhaps this has nothing to do with us, but does it have anything to do with you, Griffith? Jack held the lamp. His eyes hidden under the pumpkin hole flashed red. Why are you stopping us? Isn't that nonsense? Griffith said as if it was a matter of course. This is the base of the dragon horn griffin lion. Only the community of the rulers of the hierarchy can enter. You guys, where do you think you are going to stay? What Griffith said was not without reason. If there was no reason, he naturally would not allow people to enter his own base. The problem was that this guy's tone was quite nasty. To be more precise, it should be said that he was quite arrogant. For some reason, Griffith seemed to think that he was superior and did not care to be polite to Noah and the others. Facing such a person, Noah only narrowed his eyes and spoke indifferently. That can't be right. Other than the rulers of the hierarchy, there seems to be another community stationed here. You are talking about that no name? Griffith raised his eyebrows and laughed coldly. That kind of a no name, that doesn't even have a name or flag. Who would remember it? When he said this, Aisha and Jack's face immediately changed. You. Aisha said somewhat angrily. The member of that community is a human hero who severely injured Az Dakaha and saved the lives of all the people in the northern district of Blazing Flames. Is that how you treat the community of human heroes? Human hero? Griffith scoffed. They don't even have wings, and they need the help of grace to fly. Just a random one of them ran out to be cannon fodder, and they can be called heroes? How laughable. What did you say? Aisha was finally angry. Not to mention Aisha, even Jack's eyes, which were hidden under the pumpkin, flashed with a bright red light. Under such circumstances, it was Noah who was the calmest. Then who are you? Hearing this, Griffith's eyes widened, and the disdain on his face became even stronger. At this time, one of Griffith's followers shouted loudly. You don't even know the leader of the Two Wings, Lord Griffith of Handsome Eagle? Where did you come from, you country bumpkin? Handsome Eagle? Noah's gaze turned to Griffith. The so-called Handsome Eagle referred to the high-level life form born from the union of a griffin and a draconic horse. It was known as the third fantasy species, and was the name of the next generation of illusion beasts. In the box, life forms with one race's genes were low-level life forms, and life forms with two or more races' genes were high-level life forms. For example, Luos, who was a demigod born from the bloodline of gods and humans, was a high-level life form. And from a high-level life form, a life form with three or more races' genes was known as the third fantasy species. Griffith was the handsome eagle of the third fantasy species. Moreover, he was the leader of the Two Wings. When the Two Wings community was mentioned, it was necessary to mention the Southern District's hierarchy, the dragon-horn griffin lion. The dragon-horn griffin lion, in the Southern District's hierarchy, was actually not a community, but an alliance formed by 6 communities. The members of this alliance formed various communities based on their physical characteristics. These communities were the horn, 2 wings, 3 tails, 4 legs, 5 claws, and 6 wounds. Among them, the leader of the horn, Sarah, was the chairman of the dragon-horn griffin lion alliance. As for Griffith, he was the leader of the 2 wings, which was second only to the horn led by Sarah. This made Noah understand why Griffith was so unruly. It was normal for people with noble bloodlines to feel proud of their birth. Griffith was probably such an existence, right? He believed that as a third fantasy species, he was superior to others and was disdainful of ordinary humans. He was the type that looked down on others from the bottom of his heart. This kind of person was not rare among illusion beasts and high-level life forms that believed themselves to be different. As a third fantasy species, Griffith seemed to have this quality. Even though it wasn't a quality that deserved compliments. Therefore, Griffith was so vile not because he wanted to find fault, but because he was looking down on others as a matter of course. Understanding this, Noah smiled and said, "Then, if I say that I am a member of No Name, will you let me in?" Wah. What? Griffith's lackeys were stunned. Sia and Jack were also surprised. As for Griffith, he frowned slightly, looked at Noah, and sneered. "So that's how it is, it's that lowly race in the nameless community again. I have long been unhappy that a mere no name is stationed in the same place as us. If you want to go in, then come and try." After that, Griffith said to his 2 lackeys, "Let's go. You 2, play with him." "Yes." Griffith's 2 lackeys immediately walked towards Noah with a sinister grin on their faces. Seeing this, Sia and Jack could no longer sit still. However, before Sia and Jack could do anything, Noah glanced at the 2 lackeys walking towards him with a sinister smile, then looked at Griffith, who looked like he was watching a good show, and sighed. "Undoubtedly, you are proud of the fact that you are a superior phantom beast, but instead of being a good phantom beast, you jump out to be a fly. If the so-called superior life forms have nothing to do, then let me see if you're thicker than the humans you look down on." As soon as he finished speaking, Noah looked up and smiled at his 2 stunned followers. Bang! Following a muffled thud, 2 figures suddenly flew past Griffith, who was still looking like he was watching a good show. A strong gust of wind was stirred up as they heavily slammed into the walls on both sides of the door of the throne hall. Griffith's expression froze. On the other hand, Noah still stood in place as if nothing had happened. He opened and closed his fist and looked at Griffith with a spurious smile. "Indeed, your skin is much thicker than that of humans. You only fainted after being embedded in the wall. Presumably, the skin of a third fantasy breed must be thicker, right? Perhaps you can take a few more punches?" Only then did Griffith react. Then, he was infuriated by Noah's contemptuous tone. "Inferior human. How dare you? Don't tell me you want to say that I, an inferior human, dare to attack you, the so-called superior phantom beasts?" Noah's understatement blocked Griffith's words. What a boring line, but it can't be said badly. After all, it sounds like something a small character would say. Small character? Me? I'm a small character? Griffith widened his eyes, and a violent anger surged in his eyes. Just as Griffith was about to launch an attack, a delicate voice rang out. "What are you doing?" As the voice sounded, Sarah and the rest walked out of the throne room. Noah turned his gaze and met the eyes of Ren and the rest beside Sarah. Ren and the rest suddenly stopped in their tracks as if they were struck by lightning. They were completely stunned. Chapter 15:18. At this moment, whether it was Juyuasuka, Haruai, Black Rabbit, Ren, or even Letitia and Pest, they were all stunned on the spot. They looked at Noah absent-mindedly and did not react for a long time. Not only the group from No Name, even Shadora and Mandora from Salamandra were stunned on the spot. They did not react at all. Only the Queen Knight, who had never seen Noah before, looked at the group of people who were stunned on the spot. Even Sarah seemed to be puzzled. "What's wrong with you guys?" Sarah's words did not cause any reaction from the group. Everyone was still looking at Noah in a daze. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. At this moment, even Aisha and Jack felt that something was wrong and looked at each other. As for Noah, he looked at the group from No Name and Salamandra, who were stunned on the spot. He rubbed his nose embarrassedly and opened his mouth. "What's wrong? You don't recognize me?" That familiar voice finally caused everyone to wake up. Jiusuka, Haruai, and Ren's eyes were faintly filled with excitement. Letitia and Pest's eyes lit up. As for Black Rabbit, tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. She did not hesitate to pounce in Noah's direction. "Noah-san." Seeing the Black Rabbit pouncing in his direction, Noah was shocked. He quickly stepped forward, opened his arms, and hugged the Black Rabbit in his arms. In the next moment, an unimaginably soft and elastic feeling acted on Noah's body, causing Noah's heart to ripple slightly. There was no helping it. This rabbit's figure was simply too good. Black Rabbit, who did not know about the ripples in Noah's heart, did not know that she was being taken advantage of. She was crying and laughing as she hugged Noah's neck, jumping up and down continuously. "Noah-san? You didn't die? You really didn't die? Do you really want me to die?" Noah did not know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. "Well, although it was a little dangerous, at least I survived. If you're not dead, then hurry up and come back." Jill Yufei couldn't help but step forward and complain to Noah. "You actually disappeared for an entire month. Do you know how hard it was for us this entire month?" "That's right." Haruhibu Yaichi nodded his head indignantly. "I was almost killed by that lizard. Being killed is the same for everyone, right?" Noah sighed and patted the back of the Black Rabbit that was hugging him tightly. "No matter what, it's best that everyone is safe." Hearing this, Black Rabbit, Komodo Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi's beautiful faces couldn't help but bloom with beautiful smiles. Only then did Noah turn around and look at Letitia and Pest with a smile on his face. "Thank you for your hard work, Letitia, Pest." "There's no such thing." Letitia gently shook her head. "I've always believed that Master wouldn't die like this." "Humph," Pest let out a soft snort. "Although if you didn't come back soon, when that Demon King broke out of his seal, all of us might have died," Ren nodded. Although he did not say anything, he was also extremely excited. It was only at this moment that the crowd finally reacted. "Hey, Jack." Ai Xia spoke in a somewhat confused manner. "What's the situation now?" "Ahahaha." Jack let out a witty laugh. However, there was a hint of excitement in his voice. "It's nothing. It's just that this Mister who saved us has an even greater background than we imagined." Sarah looked at Noah with a somewhat astonished expression. "He's that hero from No Name?" "That's right, Sister Sarah." Shadora nodded her head heavily. Her eyes were actually filled with admiration as she looked at Noah. "He's the hero who helped us stop that ancient Demon King. He's the hero who saved everyone in the City of Raging Flames." At the side, the Queen Paladin stared at Noah and fell into silence. Seeing that everyone's attention was drawn away by Noah, Griffith, who was ignored, shouted angrily. "All of you, get out of my way. I'm going to tear that lowly monkey apart." Griffith's roar finally reminded everyone of his existence. "What's wrong?" Sarah frowned. "What happened?" Ren and the others turned their gazes to Noah, their eyes filled with questions. Seeing this, Noah curled his lips and said, "It's nothing. It's nothing. I've just been pestered by some blind flies." "Fly?" The anger in Griffith's heart was about to explode. Veins even popped out on his temples, and his entire body trembled. You actually said that I'm a fly?" You said that my third fantasy breed is a fly? What? Don't tell me you want to say that you don't look like a fly? Noah mocked. Indeed, flies aren't as big as you. Then, I'll correct you and call you a big fly for the time being. Noah's sarcasm finally made Griffith's anger completely erupt. Damn lowly monkey. Amidst the roar, Griffith's body suddenly expanded and slowly changed shape. Beep, beep, beep. Bolts of lightning flashed from Griffith's body. Griffith twisted and transformed in the lightning and gradually shed his human form, revealing his original form. Not long after, an alien beast appeared in front of everyone. It was a phantom beast whose upper body was a vulture and lower body was a horse, but the horse's body was covered in scales. The winged man image up until now was only forged by Griffith with the gift of humanization. The current half-vulture, half-horse form was the true form of the third fantasy breed eagle. Seeing Griffith reveal his original form, everyone was shocked. Griffith! Sarah shouted angrily. What are you doing? Shut up. Griffith was so angry that he lost his mind and actually roared at the chairman of the Community Alliance. This is my business. Mind your own business. You. An angry expression appeared on Sarah's face. Damn lowly monkey. Griffith was completely unaware of Noah's true identity and stared at him with a ferocious gaze. How dare you insult me, a noble third fantasy breed? I'll let you know the power of the second-generation phantom beast born from the union of a griffin and a draconic horse. Seeing that Griffith was about to launch an attack on Noah, Letitia stood in front of Noah without hesitation. Her crimson eyes stared straight ahead, ignoring Jiao So, Yao, and Black Rabbit for the time being. You want to attack my master? Pest didn't stand out and only said disdainfully. How foolish. As for Noah, he only patted the back of Black Rabbit in his arms and gently pushed it away. He then pressed on Letitia's shoulder, stood out, and looked at Griffith. After sizing up Griffith's half-vulture, half-horse form, Noah sneered. As expected of a bastard. The ferocious gaze in Griffith's eyes froze. Bang! In the next moment, violent lightning surged from Griffith's body. Sarah, who sensed something, cried out in alarm. Stop! However, it was already too late to make a sound. With a bang, the half-vulture, half-horse phantom beast, whose entire body was surrounded by lightning, stomped on the ground and charged toward Noah like a bullet. Wherever the half-vulture half-horse phantom beast passed by, the ground would crack inch by inch under the impact of the strong wind and violent lightning, and even directly shattered into pieces. Such a powerful charge caused everyone present to reveal a shocked expression. Only the Queen Paladin, who had been silently watching Noah, noticed it. Looking at Griffith, who was charging at him with the force of 1,000 caddies, Noah's mouth slowly curled up into an arc. That curl was rather cold. Immediately after, Noah moved. Facing Griffith, who was charging toward him, Noah clenched his fist as if he was slapping his face. He waved his fist toward the vulture head surrounded by lightning. Bang! Amidst a thunderous explosion, Griffith, who was charging forward with great momentum, was suddenly blasted away, smashing into a thick wall. His head drooped down as he completely fainted. Chapter 15:19. The entire place fell silent. Everyone looked at Griffith, who had been sent flying by a punch and smashed into the wall, completely unconscious. For a moment, some people were unable to react. Noah was the only one who slowly retracted his fist as though he had really just swatted a fly. He dusted his hands and said nonchalantly, "Don't worry. Well, the annoying fly has been dealt with. Can I go in now?" Hearing this, everyone finally reacted and looked at each other in dismay. In the end, it was Sarah who smiled bitterly and said this. As expected of the hero who can even force a demon king into a corner. Forced into a corner? Noah laughed self-deprecatingly. If that lizard can't be resurrected, then maybe it can be said that. Comparing Aziz Dakaha with Griffith was really overestimating that half-vulture half-horse bastard. In the world of the God Slayer, before the battle with Rama, Noah had already met the requirements to level up. He only needed to complete the great feat as long as he defeated Rama, the hero who annihilated the demon king. This great feat would be completed and Noah would level up. Therefore, before returning to the box, Noah carried out an update on his ability value. The result was naturally a successful level up. Noah Dole LV 6 Strength, I-0, Durability, I-0, Dexterity, I-0, Agility, I-0, Magic, I-0, Mystery, C Magic, D Swordsman, B Break, B Toughness, I Magic, Weapon Refinement, Steel Refining, Magic Duplicate, Refine, and Forge Weapons Duplicate, Refine, and Forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a certain period of time according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection, permanent magic, obtain permanent protection according to the attributes of the contracted spirit. Contract spirit, as a sword spirit, obtain the protection of the sword spirit and weaken the physical attack on the body. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold Smelting, quick attack magic, gradually turn the target into steel. Once the tempering is successful, it will shatter into pieces. The tempering speed depends on the strength and ability of the target. Skills, protection from the world, a permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. After rising to LV6, Noah's physical ability has made a qualitative leap. If at LV5, Noah still needed to use strengthening magic to strengthen his body to have a physical ability comparable to 16 knights, then now, even if he did not use strengthening magic to strengthen his body, Noah's physical ability could compete with 16 knights. Under such circumstances, Griffith took a direct hit from Noah and had no chance of getting up. After all, Griffith's strength was at most in the 5 digits. He was not at the top. After taking a solid punch from Noah, how could he still get up? As for the development ability that Noah obtained after rising to LV6, it was naturally the ability, Toughness, that appeared in the ability value. That was a developmental ability that could only be obtained if one survived a life-threatening injury. The effect of this development ability was to reduce pain and stimulate vitality when suffering a serious injury. This allowed Noah to maintain his best fighting strength no matter how serious the injury was and would not be affected by it. If Noah already had this development ability in the battle with Aziz Dakaha, the result would definitely be different. After all, when he was seriously injured by Aziz Dakaha, if he had the development ability, Toughness, Noah could maintain his best condition and repel the lizard. Then, he could use the incarnation of Spirit to heal the injury, instead of losing consciousness and directly fainting. In short, compared to a month ago, the current Noah's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Although it could not be considered a transformation, Noah would not have to suffer as much as last time when he faced Aziz Dakaha again. Therefore, compared to Aziz Dakaha, Griffith could only be considered as a fly. He was not even qualified to be mentioned in the same breath. To Noah, swatting away such a fly was nothing to be surprised about. He believed that if he reversed 16 knights, he should be able to defeat Griffith with one punch, right? Thinking of this, Noah suddenly froze and looked around. Right, where is 16 knights? As soon as these words came out, the faces of the members of No Name froze. It wasn't just the members of No Name. Even Sarah and Shadora were dumbfounded. They didn't know what to say. Seeing this, Noah had an ominous premonition in his heart. The pungent smell of medicine filled the space. This was a simple ward. It was obvious that the room had been temporarily vacated. In such a simple ward, there was a bed. On the bed, 16 knights was lying there. His eyes were closed and his face was pale as he slept. This guy who had always been arrogant in the past was now in a terrible state. His body was covered in bandages. His hands were filled with intravenous drips. His chest was covered with wires that connected to the surrounding machine-like instruments. Even his lips were dry and cracked. His body had lost a lot of weight. People could not help but sympathize with him. Seeing 16 knights like this, Noah became silent. His fists began to clench little by little. Other than Noah, the rest of the no-name members were all there. Seeing Noah fall into silence and slowly clench his fists, Jiusuke and Kazuhito did not know what to say. Letitia and Pest also did not say a word. Even Black Rabbit's face was gloomy. The atmosphere in the room became abnormally heavy. In the end, it was Ren who pulled himself together and said this sentence. In the battle with Aziz Dakaha, Mr. 16 Knights was the main force. He directly clashed with the Demon King. Just this sentence alone was enough to explain the situation. Although he was the main force, 16 Knights was not Aziz Dakaha's match at all. Therefore, this insufferably arrogant young man was finally defeated. He was heavily injured and became like this. Originally, Mr. 16 Knight's injuries should have been more serious. He should have been on the brink of death. Fortunately, we have the gift of healing and healed most of Mr. 16 Knight's injuries. Ren glanced at Noah secretly. However, although most of his injuries have been healed, Mr. 16 Knights has not woken up. In other words, the danger to his life was temporarily removed. However, no one knew when he would wake up. Noah stared at 16 Knights who was lying on the bed without any movement. He clenched his fists tighter and tighter. As Noah's emotions surged in his heart, a terrifying aura expanded from his body. The astonishing aura was like a heavy pressure, causing everyone present to feel their shoulders sink. They all revealed expressions of shock. Noah. Mr. Noah? Black Rabbit seemed to be so frightened that he did not dare to speak. Noah. Noah? Joyuen Asuka and Haruai Biao looked at Noah in shock. Master. Letitia hurriedly called out. Please calm down. That's right. Pest muttered in a somewhat flustered manner. Even if you want to flip out, you should do it outside. Don't do it here. The voices of the girls woke Noah up. He suppressed the surging emotions in his heart and let the astonishing aura slowly disappear. Only then did everyone involuntarily let out a sigh of relief. However, in the next moment, Noah's words caused the hearts of No Name's group to rise again. Letitia. Noah suddenly asked. Where is that lizard sealed? Letitia hesitated for a moment but chose to obediently answer. It's not far from here. White Yiksha is also there. He has been guarding the seal. Is that so? Noah nodded. Tell me the place. I'll go and take a look. Letitia was completely hesitant. In the end, she could only nod helplessly. Chapter 15:20. The sky was still gloomy, without a single ray of sunlight, making those who saw it feel depressed. In the distant sky, a stream of light swept past at an extreme speed, cutting through the sky, flying forward at an extremely fast speed. The speed of the stream of light was very fast, almost comparable to a real meteor. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, the stream of light that cut through the sky swept over the outer area and stopped, revealing the full appearance of the inner area. The person who came was naturally Noah. It should be here, right? Noah compared the location provided by Letitia, then lowered his head and looked down. What entered his eyes was a ruin. There was almost no intact building, the air was filled with the smell of smoke, and the ground was also full of craters, as if the ruins had been destroyed by the flames of war. Looking at the ruins, the energy in Noah's energy source was all converted into magic power in an instant, flowing inside his body and the next moment, Noah's pair of eyes flickered slightly. That was the sign of the activation of enhanced magic. Although Noah had always been using enhanced magic to strengthen his physical ability, the use of this magic was actually very broad. If used on a fan, it could strengthen the wind. If used on a light bulb, it could increase the brightness. If used on a wooden board, it could increase the hardness. If used on a sword, it could become sharp. And if used on the eyes, the vision would be strengthened. At this moment, Noah's vision was almost improved to the level of an eagle's eye, sweeping across the ruins below, and finally stopping at a place. It was a square. A very vast square that looked like it had just been opened up. This square was the only area in the ruins that looked like nothing had happened, and everything was intact as usual. In such an area, a woman with waist-length silvery hair that was as soft as moonlight was sitting cross-legged there. She gave off the illusion that her hair was shining like sunlight. The woman's head was pierced with a bell hairpin, and she was wearing a purple and white kimono. Her appearance was picturesque, but her temperament was quite elegant. From her appearance, this beautiful woman's age was about 20 years old. The person Noah was looking for, in his memory, only had the appearance of 11 or 12 years old. The two, from the appearance, were obviously not the same person. However, in this box full of asuras, gods, and Buddhas, what kind of strange power was there? Hiding one's appearance was as simple as it could be. Therefore, although the appearance did not match, Noah could be sure that she was the person he was looking for. Thus, Noah slowly landed on the ground. The silver-haired woman seemed to have noticed something. She opened her eyes and looked in front of her. When she saw Noah standing in front of her, her eyes immediately widened and she exclaimed in shock. "You," Noah smiled helplessly when he saw the shocked expression on the man's face. "Let me tell you first. You didn't see wrongly, White Yiksha." Yes. The beautiful silver-haired woman in front of him was the sun's astral spirit White Yiksha. She had returned Yiksha's divine spark and retrieved all her powers as an astral spirit. She was an existence known as the White Night King. "You." The shock on White Yiksha's face turned into pleasant surprise. "So you didn't die?" "Just a little." Noah laughed bitterly. "Just a little. No matter how much you missed, it's best that you survived." White Yiksha felt joy from the bottom of her heart. "You beat that demonic dragon to the point where its heart was exposed, but failed to kill it. I thought you had really lost at the final moment." "In fact, I did lose." Noah spread his hands. "I lost to the human's final trial." "Lost to the human's final trial?" White Yiksha seemed to understand the meaning behind Noah's words as she looked at Noah with deep meaning. "That is to say, you didn't lose to Az Dakaha?" Noah smiled without a word. He lowered his head and looked at the ground. His dark eyes flickered slightly. "That lizard is now sealed underground, right?" "That's right." White Yiksha's expression immediately turned complicated. "I never expected that even with my authority as the organizer, I was unable to seal it permanently. Az Dakaha's ability has indeed exceeded my expectations. If even the famous White Night King says so, then it's right." Noah sighed. "From the looks of it, the two of us are in the same boat. We were both killed by that lizard when we thought there was no suspense. As expected of the human's final trial. However, even if it's the human's final trial, it should have come to an end, right?" White Yiksha said with an optimistic tone. "Since you didn't die, it won't be a big deal even if that demonic dragon breaks out of the seal." These words made Noah raise his eyebrows slightly. "You have that much confidence in me? To be able to force the human's final trial into a desperate situation, even if I can't say that I have confidence, I can still increase my chances of winning to the maximum." White Yiksha's tone became a little excited. "With you and the people of the Sky Army, we will definitely be able to defeat the human's final trial." Hearing White Yiksha mention the existence, Noah's eyes flickered again. The so-called Sky Army referred to the united community of gods whose purpose was to suppress the Demon King. The Demon King here did not refer to the kind of Asura gods that had fallen into depravity after abusing the organizer's authority. Instead, it was a true Demon King, a human's final trial like Az Dakaha. The human's final trial had the nature of killing gods. The gods that were killed by them would even have their existences wiped out. There was absolutely no way for them to be resurrected. Such an existence would naturally be seen as a great threat by the gods of various mythological systems. For this reason, the gods of various mythological systems formed an alliance and created a community whose purpose was to suppress the demon king. That was the Sky Army. Every god in this community was an existence that was ranked in the top 3. One could imagine how powerful this community would be. If the community of the Sky Army formed by various gods was really mobilized, the situation would definitely be much better than having a group of 5-digit leaders to fight against the demon king. If that was the case, it was no wonder that White Yiksha had high hopes for the Sky Army. However, Noah was silent for a while before suddenly speaking. Will the so-called Sky Army really be mobilized? This sentence stunned White Yiksha as expected. You. White Yiksha said with some uncertainty. What do you mean by that? It's just the literal meaning. Noah looked straight at White Yiksha. Will that Sky Army really be mobilized to deal with Faz Dakaha? Aren't you asking the obvious? White Yiksha frowned. The Sky Army that is ranked in the top 3 is a community that exists to suppress the oldest demon king. Now that Az Dakaha has appeared, how could they not? Before White Yiksha could finish his sentence, Noah interrupted him. It's been a month since Az Dakaha broke out of the seal. It's been a whole month. If the Sky Army was really going to be mobilized, they should have appeared here a long time ago. Why is there no sign of them until now? This. White Yiksha was suddenly stunned and said with some confusion. Perhaps. Perhaps it's because of some unforeseen event. Unforeseen event? Noah pursed his lips. Perhaps that's the reason. But even if there's an unforeseen event, there should be some news about it in a month's time. But so far, none of the existences that are above 3 digits have appeared. Don't you think it's a bit strange? Strange? White Yiksha immediately felt uneasy. You mean, don't you understand? Noah glanced at White Yiksha and said word by word. Then I'll make it clear. No matter what happens, the Sky Army will not be mobilized. Before Bayasha could react, a voice suddenly rang out. He's right. White Night King, the Sky Army will not be mobilized. The sudden voice stunned Noah and White Yiksha. Chapter 1521. Long time no see, White Night King. With such a voice, a figure suddenly appeared in the square with a gust of wind without any warning. I can't remember when was the last time we met, but I didn't expect that we would meet again in such a manner. If possible, I really want to complain to someone. The person who said this was a young girl. She had golden hair like the rice ears on the earth, a pair of deep green gem-like eyes, and a rather petite figure. She looked to be only 13 or 14 years old. The young girl's appearance was rather lovable. If she squeezed out tears, even the most heartless criminal would be soft-hearted. However, it was such a lovable girl who not only carried a heavy steel rod in her hand, but also had an awe-inspiring expression in her eyes. Even her entire body carried a kind of otherworldly temperament, causing people to be unable to help but look askance at her. Noah and White Yiksha both turned their gazes to the young girl. Looking at the young girl carrying the heavy steel rod, for some reason, Noah felt a familiar but very strange feeling. The reason why he said it was familiar was because Noah felt that he seemed to know this young girl. The reason why he said it was strange was because Noah felt that this young girl seemed to be different from what he knew. Under such circumstances, Bayasha let out a cry of surprise. The great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong? As soon as he said that, even Noah's eyes widened to their widest point. The great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong. Noah was indeed very familiar with this name. Not only was he familiar with it, but in the world of God Slayer, Noah had slain Ape God, who had this name twice and sent him back to the myths. However, it was precisely because of this that Noah felt strange. The great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong? How could that monkey be such a cute young girl? Of course, as 2 completely different worlds, it was not surprising that the great sage, heaven's equal in this world existed in such an image. However, when the name of the great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong, was mentioned, no one in the square would not be surprised. This was because Sun Wukong, the great sage equaling heaven, was the head of the seven heavens great sage, the first of the seven great demon kings. Seven heavens great sage. They were referring to the seven demon kings in the famous mythological story, Journey to the West. Unlike the great sage equaling heaven in the world of the god Slayer, the great sage equaling heaven in this world was neither a monkey monster nor a god. Instead, it was a unique half-star spirit that was born in the center of the earth and transported to the ground through the eruption of an underwater volcano. The so-called half-star spirit, in a nutshell, referred to the star spirit's reserve. They were born with the grace of the planet. In order to protect the land that gave birth to them, they would be given an innate mission. After tens of thousands of years, they would complete their mission and finally awaken as complete star spirits. The great sage, heaven's equal, was such an existence. However, this half-star spirit was separated from the center of the planet due to a change in the Earth's crust. It was washed up to the surface and was born on the peak of the mountain of flowers and fruit. Thus, it was not given the mission of becoming a half-star spirit and could not be awakened as a complete star spirit. However, even so, the great sage, heaven's equal, was still one of the strongest star spirit candidates. His strength was unquestionable. In terms of pure fighting strength, the great sage, heaven's equal, was not inferior to the main gods of the various god groups. In this way, she was given a 3-digit status in the box court. However, just like what was recorded in Journey to the West, the great sage, heaven's equal, had a falling out with the gods. In ancient times, he had started a fierce battle with many god groups. Before and after that battle, the 6 demon kings recorded in Journey to the West, who agreed with the great sage, heaven's equal's ideals and were willing to fight for him, became sworn brothers with him. They formed an alliance to fight against the heavens together. That alliance was the 7 heavens great sage. The 7 demon kings under the 7 heavens great sage each called themselves great sage. The great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong. The great sage, heaven's equal, Bull demon king. The great sage, ocean cover, Dragon demon king. The great sage, chaotic heaven, Rock demon king. These were all famous demon kings in Journey to the West. As for the other 3, one was wandering in a foreign land, while the other 2 died in a great battle with the Jade Emperor and other Taoist gods. Even their souls were suppressed in hell, never to be reincarnated. Even so, the great sage, heaven's equal, still teamed up with the remaining 4 demon kings and turned the heavens upside down. They killed their way up to the 3-digit level of the heavens before finally being defeated by Shakyamuni and being imprisoned for 500 years. Later, the great sage, heaven's equal, took Xuanzang Sanzang as his master and went to India to seek the true scriptures and convert to Buddhism. This was a legacy that everyone knew. In other words, this seemingly weak girl had once led several demon kings in a fierce battle with many god groups in the upper echelons of the heavens. In the end, she even killed their way up to the 3-digit level, an existence that countless gods feared. How could Noah not be shocked? If Noah was shocked, White Yiksha was even more shocked. Seeing Noah and White Yiksha's extremely shocked expressions, the great sage, heaven's equal, scratched his head and complained. That's why I said, why do you have to send a notorious person like me to carry out such a thankless task? The great sage, heaven's equal's complaint finally made Noah and White Yiksha react. White Yiksha immediately spoke in shock and doubt. Why are you here? The one who answered White Yiksha's question was not the great sage, heaven's equal, but Noah. Didn't you hear it just now? Noah looked at the great sage, heaven's equal, with a faint smile. I'm here to carry out a thankless task. Task? The surprise on White Yiksha's face finally faded and he frowned. What's going on? Hearing this, the great sage, heaven's equal, raised his eyes and looked at White Yiksha with a pair of clear eyes. It was as if he could not see Noah at all as he spoke in an emotionless tone. White Night King, I'm here to take you back. Take me back? White Yiksha was startled at first, but then he understood. Originally, as an existence with more than 3 digits, White Yiksha could not interfere with the order of the lower levels of the box court. However, in order to protect the order of the box court, White Yiksha voluntarily converted to Buddhism and obtained a godhead. He suppressed his original strength and obtained the opportunity to go to the lower levels and become the ruler of the hierarchy. Now, White Yiksha had already returned the godhead. Of course, he could not continue to stay here. The great sage, Heaven's equal, was here to take White Yiksha back. Wait. Wait a minute. White Yiksha hurriedly said. Now is not the time. The humans have not been defeated in the final trial. There's no need for that. The great sage, Heaven's equal, suddenly said. The gods of the upper class have decided to abandon the existing human history, destroy this box court world, and build a new box court. Only those with a population of more than 4 digits have the right to move to the new box court. Those with a population of less than 4 digits and lives will be abandoned. The declaration was like a bolt from the blue, leaving White Yiksha completely dumbfounded on the spot. I see. Is that why the Sky Army hasn't moved? Noah sneered. Because they don't want to defeat Az Dakaha at all. Instead, they are prepared to use the entire box court as Az Dakaha's cage and abandon it altogether. Impossible. White Yiksha could not help but raise his voice. Then, he stared at the great sage, Heaven's equal. How can such a thing happen? Faced with White Yiksha's stare, the great sage, Heaven's equal, announced with an attitude that seemed to be able to strangle all personal feelings. White Knight King, don't take any chances. The lower levels are hopeless. Existences with more than 4 digits have already agreed to abandon the current box court and build a new one. If you want to open up a new world, you need more than half of the sun's sovereignty. Therefore, the upper level has asked me to take you back. This sentence completely shattered White Yiksha's hopes of luck. Stop joking. Following White Yiksha's angry roar, a terrifying pressure rose from his body and turned into a substantial shock wave. Like a storm, it expanded and instantly spread to the entire square. Pa, 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 pa. Under the terrifying pressure, the ground cracked inch by inch and sank down piece by piece, causing the entire world to tremble. Noah's eyes suddenly focused. Chapter 1522. As heaven and earth trembled, the terrifying pressure that rose from White Yiksha's body crazily spread in all directions, causing the space of the entire square to tremble as if it was welcoming a storm and an earthquake. The ground cracked piece by piece. The substantial pressure turned into shock waves that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The demon king of the White Knight slowly stood up, his face filled with rage. He was once the center of the universe that ruled over all the gods and was ranked in the top 2 digits. Although his power had shrunk significantly, he still had the terrifying might of the top 10. Give up the lower levels of the box court? Why do you think I, White Knight, was willing to convert to Buddhism? Now you want to give up just like that? Did you ask for my permission? White Yiksha, who was in a rage, said every word that shook the air. It was as if heaven and earth were changing colors. The ground trembled and the sky wailed. In the face of such a terrifying power, even Noah couldn't help but feel suffocated. His entire body tensed up, and only then did he manage to maintain his figure and not be pushed back by the shockwave that shook and turned into a substantial form. Although Noah could match an existence in the triple digits if he went all out, White Yiksha was obviously much more terrifying than that. Just his anger had almost caused a change in heaven and earth. It was simply unheard of. On the other hand, the great sage, Heaven's equal, who was a half-star soul, did not seem to feel anything. He continued speaking with a normal expression. It's useless, White Knight King. The god groups in the upper levels have already agreed to the plan to create a new box court. Even if you don't agree, it's useless. Those guys will not send the Sky Army to deal with Az Dakaha. In that case, I don't need the help of those idiots. White Yiksha was furious. I will bring down Az Dakar. No, you can't do it. You know this best. You even used your authority as the organizer, but you still can't do anything to Azdakaha. You can no longer threaten that devil dragon. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, pointed out the crux of the matter. Moreover, if you make such a choice, the enemies you will face will not only be the humans in the final trial, but also all the gods above the 3-digit number. After all, they must obtain the sovereignty of the sun from your hands, or else the new box court will not be able to be established. Those fellows want to seize the sovereignty of the sun from my hands? White Yiksha was so angry that he laughed. It seems that I've been abiding by the law for too long. Those guys who didn't even dare to breathe in front of me have forgotten that I also have a temper. Very well, bring all those B***stards here. Let's see whether they can do anything to me. As Bayasha's emotions became more and more agitated, his soft, waist-length silver hair began to undulate slightly, emitting a sun-like radiance and heat. Suddenly, the temperature of the entire space kept rising, causing the ground to dry up bit by bit as if it was being baked, and steam rose up. Undoubtedly, he hadn't used a single bit of power. Just the fluctuations of his emotions had caused such a commotion. The top 10 sun star spirits were indeed terrifying. Furthermore, White Yiksha had more than half of the sun's sovereignty. With 14 sun sovereignty as a foundation, the threat that White Yiksha could unleash was definitely not inferior to Azdakaha. It was the same even if he was facing 1,000,000 gods. As the great sage, Heaven's Equal, who had once caused a commotion in the heavenly realm and made many gods fear him, Sun Wukong naturally understood White Yiksha's abilities. Regarding this, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, only looked at White Yiksha, who was trembling with a violent aura, and spoke softly. Is there no room for negotiation? There's no room for negotiation. White Yiksha said without hesitation. If you don't want to manage this box court, then I'll manage it. But if you want me to compromise, dream on. I guessed so too. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, sighed. But have you ever thought that if you make this choice, the higher-ups will definitely not sit idly by? In order to create a new box court, they need more than half of the sun's sovereignty, and only you can fulfill this condition, White Knight King. At that time, those fellows who have already given up on this box court will definitely not mind coming out in full force and causing the entire box court that you cherish to collapse. Saying this, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, looked straight at White Yiksha. At that time, those you love will definitely all suffer misfortune. Coupled with the threat of Azdakaha, White Knight King, do you think you have a way to protect the box court between these two? White Yiksha's expression instantly became extremely ugly. However, it had to be said that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had hit the nail on the head. Azdakaha alone was enough to bring unimaginable disaster to the entire box court. If at this time, there were also the attacks of the 3-digit number of gods in the box court, then even if White Yiksha had the power to contend with them, what could he do? The so-called being unable to split himself up referred to this. Even if it was White Yiksha, there was no way to deal with the 3-digit number of Azura gods one by one while dealing with Azdakaha. At that time, by the time White Yiksha settled everything, the box court would have been ravaged to the point of being riddled with holes and countless casualties. Now, just to maintain Azdakaha's seal, you have no way to leave this place, right? The great sage, Heaven's Equal, said extremely calmly. Under the situation where you can't leave this place, do you have a way to stop the higher-ups from causing trouble? White Yiksha's expression became uglier and uglier, and his eyes began to show unsettled emotions. Seeing this, Noah frowned deeply, and his dark and deep eyes became cold. As for whether the so-called Sky Army wanted to come to support, Noah did not care at all. Because from the very beginning, Noah had already made up his mind. He would be the one to bring down Azdakaha. In that case, whether the Sky Army came or not did not matter at all. Therefore, Noah was not as angry as White Yiksha. Didn't the gods in the upper echelons plan to abandon the box court because of the threat of Azdakaha? Then Noah would completely crush this threat, protect the box court, and give them a hard slap. That would be enough. However, if those guys intended to become a threat themselves, then it was a different story. In the box court, there were also companions and friends that Noah valued. If the gods of the upper level intended to harm them, then Noah would be like White Yiksha and personally deal with those bastards. Thinking of this, just as Noah was about to stand up and say something, White Yiksha suddenly turned his head and looked at Noah, his eyes flashing with determination. Clang! It was also at this moment that White Yiksha's entire body bloomed with dazzling light. Seeing this, the great sage, Heaven's Equal's gaze turned cold, and he held the steel rod on his shoulder tightly in his hand. Obviously, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, thought that White Yiksha was about to make a move. Not to mention the great sage, Heaven's Equal, even Noah thought that White Yiksha was about to make a move. However, what happened in the next second shocked Noah and the great sage, Heaven's Equal. Wang! From the dazzling light that bloomed from White Yiksha's body, balls of light that resembled suns suddenly flashed and rushed out at an extreme speed in a certain direction. Noah was standing there. What? The great sage, Heaven's Equal, was shocked. Noah's expression also changed. Noah did not expect that White Yiksha would suddenly attack him. As a result, when Noah reacted, the balls of light had already rushed in front of him. In the end, Noah could only raise his hand reflexively and block in front of him. However, when the balls of light touched Noah's body, they were like water, merging into Noah's body bit by bit. This scene stunned the great sage, Heaven's Equal, at first, then he thought of something and his expression changed abruptly. Could it be, on the other side, after the balls of light merged into his body, Noah immediately discovered it. In the depths of his heart, on the stone plate in the center of the universe sea, engravings began to appear one by one in the imprint of the sun. Originally, in the sun, there was only a roaring lion and a divine dragon. However, at this moment, other engravings appeared one after another, equally dividing the area in the sun with the lion and the divine dragon. In the end, there were a total of 14 such engravings. Noticing this, Noah finally understood. Chapter 15:23. With a trembling sound, the faint radiance emitted from Noah's body began to dissipate. However, both Noah and the great sage, Heaven's Equal, looked at Yasha in disbelief. White Yiksha. Noah muttered in disbelief. I'm sorry, kid, White Yiksha said apologetically and helplessly. Just as the great sage said, I'm in a very awkward situation now. Therefore, I can only place my hopes on you. Is there any hope? Great sage equaling heaven laughed bitterly. He looked at Yasha with condemnation. For the sake of a single hope, you actually gave the most precious sun sovereignty to this brat. That's a total of 14 sun sovereigns. Isn't that a little too generous? That's right. Just now, the balls of light that appeared from White Yiksha's body and merged into Noah's body were sun sovereignty. The White Yiksha had actually transferred all the sovereignty of the sun that he controlled to Noah. A full 14 sun sovereignty. Therefore, in the sun in the center of the stone plate that was branded in Noah's heart, apart from the Leo constellation that represented the 12 zodiac signs and the 12 equatorial stars, there were 14 more engravings. Those engravings each represented a sun sovereignty. In other words, at this moment, Noah controlled 16 sun sovereignty. He controlled 2/3 of the 24 sun sovereignty. In this way, how could Noah and the great sage not be surprised by White Yiksha, who had given away 14 sun sovereignty in one go? This was especially so for Noah. When he sensed the power of the various sun sovereigns residing in his body, he was at a loss as to how to react. Only White Yiksha seemed to have put down a heavy burden and smiled sweetly. Although the sun sovereignty is precious, to me, this box is more precious than the sun sovereignty. For this box, even if I give up all the sun sovereignty, so what? But you're harming this young man. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, was a little angry. The sovereignty of the sun is precious and special. It is something that even the gods of the heavenly realm pursue. In terms of preciousness, even the another cosmology at the center of the pantheon cannot compare to it. Such a gift, if any one of them were to appear, could cause the various pantheons to vie for it. In the past, it was because so much of the sovereignty of the sun was held by you, the White Night King, that others did not dare have any ideas. Now, you have bestowed all of them to a human. Aren't you bringing disaster to him? Wasn't that so? For the sovereignty of the sun, the Demon King Alliance did not hesitate to attack the east, south, and north regions in an attempt to kill all the rulers of the hierarchy and occupy the position of the full ruler of the hierarchy. This was because if one sat in the position of the leader of the hierarchy, they would be able to obtain the sovereignty of the sun. For the sake of sovereignty over the sun, Gajiel had not hesitated to break the seal of humanity's final trial, plunging the entire box court into an abyss of suffering. This was because there was a sun sovereign in Az-Dakaha's seal. Now, for the sake of sovereignty over the sun, the various pantheon had sent the great sage, Heaven's equal, to find White Yiksha and did not hesitate to declare war on him. One could imagine how precious the sovereignty of the sun was. Just as the great sage, Heaven's equal, had said. In terms of preciousness and uniqueness, the sovereignty of the sun was even above the another cosmology. Therefore, for a long time, only the White Yiksha and the Queen of All Saints could openly hold multiple sun sovereigns without being coveted by the major god groups. There were only 4 sun sovereigns that were wandering in the human world. Now, White Yiksha had given Noah the sun sovereigns that even the various pantheon coveted. Furthermore, there were as many as 14 of them. This would definitely cause the greed in the hearts of the various pantheon to erupt. Especially now that more than half of the sun sovereigns were needed to create a new box court. Noah, who held all the sun sovereigns given by White Yiksha, would definitely become the target of all the pantheon. If things went wrong, Noah would become the hunting target of all the Asura gods and Buddhas in the box court. This was undoubtedly harming others. After all, an ordinary man was innocent, but treasuring a jade ring was a crime. It was impossible for White Yiksha not to understand this. Therefore, White Yiksha glanced at the extremely angry great sage, Heaven's equal. I say, Ryukong, aren't you underestimating this little guy too much? The great sage, Heaven's equal, was instantly stunned. Meanwhile, White Yiksha thought of many incredible things about Noah. For example, when they first met, he had sensed the power of the sun's child from Noah's body. For example, when he faced the devil star spirit, Arjel, Noah had displayed many incredible god-level bestowal weapons. For example, when the Eastern District was attacked by the two-headed dragon army, Noah had single-handedly blocked the disaster that even White Yiksha had to return his god level and retrieve all his power to resolve. Another example was his battle record of single-handedly fighting Az-Dakaha, one of the most ferocious demon kings in history who could even repel a million pantheon, into a desperate situation. Thinking of this, White Yiksha turned his head and looked at Noah with strong trust in his eyes. I believe that this little guy will definitely be able to replace me and guard this box. Even if he faces a sky full of Asura gods and Buddhas, it will be the same. White Yiksha's words without any confusion made the great sage, Heaven's equal's eyes flicker rapidly. Even Noah was at a loss when he heard these words. Noah never knew that White Yiksha would actually trust him so much that he would not hesitate to give him all the precious sovereignty of the sun. At this time, White Yiksha's voice sounded in Noah's heart without any warning. Sorry, kid, this is how it is. I can only trouble you to deal with the pantheon for the time being. If you are affected by those guys and lead to Az-Dakaha breaking out of the seal, then things will really be troublesome. Hearing this voice, Noah's eyes flashed slightly. Bayasha's plan could be understood without needing to be said. In order to prevent the situation from deteriorating to the worst, White Yiksha was prepared to work with Noah. In order to maintain the seal, White Yiksha had to stay here. Transferring all the sovereignty of the sun to Noah was because White Yiksha believed that Noah could protect the sovereignty of the sun. Secondly, it was to divert attention and make the gods of heaven focus on Noah. Otherwise, if White Yiksha could not leave this place and engaged in a fierce battle with the pantheon, it would definitely lead to Az-Dakaha breaking out of the seal. At that time, one side would be a sky full of Asura gods and Buddhas, and the other side would be the humans' final trial. For the entire box, it would be an unimaginable disaster. For this reason, White Yiksha chose to attack them one by one. Azidakaha was temporarily controlled by White Yiksha. As for the Pantheon, Noah would be in charge. I've already given you your reward. I believe that 14 Sun sovereignty is enough to be your reward. White Yiksha's heartfelt plea sounded in Noah's heart. So, please, Noah, help me guard the box. Noah fell silent. However, it had to be said that White Yiksha's heartfelt words had indeed raised Noah's fighting spirit. Wasn't this good? After all, if the Pantheon was prepared to affect the lower realm, Noah would not sit idly by. Now, it was just a matter of simplifying things. Although you came here to bring back White Yiksha, your main goal is still the sovereignty of the sun, right? Noah turned his gaze to Great Sage equaling heaven and said lightly. Then, now that the sovereignty of the sun is in my hands, what do you plan to do? Great Sage equaling heaven's brows finally furrowed tightly. Clearly, Great Sage equaling heaven had not expected this situation at all. Originally, Old Sun came here as a lobbyist. I didn't want to fight. After all, I'm not the White Knight King's opponent. Even if I went back to report, no one would say anything. Great Sage equaling heaven scratched his hair irritably and looked at Noah with a grin. However, since the sovereignty of the sun is in the hands of a lowly human, if Old Sun goes back without even fighting, those fellows will definitely use this as a pretext to make a fuss. It looks like we have to fight this battle. Hearing this, Noah smiled. His smile was somewhat cold. Then bring it on. Chapter 1524. Boom. No one knew when it started, but in the dark clouds above the gloomy sky, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared. It was as if a storm was coming, causing some changes in the air. In such a sky, two streams of light cut across the sky, as if they were chasing each other. They swept across space at an astonishing speed, leaving a faint trace in the sky. After flying for an unknown distance, the two streams of light suddenly descended from the sky and landed on a mountain peak. The people who appeared from the streams of light were Noah and the Great Sage, heaven's equal. At this moment, Noah directly stepped on the ground, raised his eyes, and looked forward. There, a young girl with an extremely lovable appearance was carrying a heavy steel rod. She stepped on a golden cloud and slowly descended from the sky. Other than that lovable posture, the girl's figure was exactly the same as the Great Sage, heaven's equal, whom Noah had fought before. However, the aura that rose from the girl's body was far superior to that of the Great Sage, heaven's equal in the world of the God Slayer. Even the Great Sage, heaven's equal, who had reached 4 digits when using the Ancient Covenant, was directly surpassed by the aura of the girl in front of him. However, that was natural. She was different from the Great Sage, heaven's equal in the world of the God Slayer. The Great Sage, heaven's equal in front of him was not only ranked in the top 3, but he was also a half-star spirit, one of the most powerful species in reserve. A natural deity. A representative of a planet. A pure-blooded dragon species. Almost every individual of the 3 most powerful species in the box possessed extremely terrifying strength. Moreover, they were born with it. The existence of these 3 most powerful species, even the weakest, could reach 4 digits in strength. As a reserve of the most powerful species, the Great Sage, heaven's equal strength had already reached an extraordinary level after many years of accumulation, even surpassing many of the most powerful species. Once, the girl had even led many immortals, gods, demons, and demons to the heaven realm and fought fiercely with the gods. She had turned the entire 3-digit level upside down before finally being defeated by Shakyamuni, who was also known as the Buddha. As for Shakyamuni, he was in existence in the double digits. In other words, the Great Sage, heaven's equal had not only destroyed the entire 3-digit number, but also forced the 2-digit number to make a move before being suppressed. He was on a completely different level from the Great Sage, heaven's equal in the world of the God Slayer, who had barely reached the 4 digits after using the Ancient Covenant. Therefore, Noah's body and mind were instantly aroused. Under such circumstances, the great sage, heaven's equal, spoke in a leisurely tone as if he was chatting with a friend. Speaking of which, I still don't know your name. Noah Dole, Noah answered straightforwardly. Just call me Noah, Noah said. Is that so? The great sage, heaven's equal, nodded and said. Understood, then I'll call you Little Noah. My name is Noah, not Little Noah. Noah frowned. Don't tell me you're toying with me. Why would I? The great sage, heaven's equal's tone was still leisurely. It's just that my temper is not as bad as before. After all, I'm a Buddhist. I can't just start a fight without saying a word, right? You really dare to say that, Noah said sarcastically. Undoubtedly, you're the one who invited me to fight, right? I've already said this. If I don't do this, I won't be able to report back to my superiors. That's all I can do. The great sage, heaven's equal, smiled disapprovingly. However, it's rare that those Buddhists are willing to let me out. Just play with me a little. Go ahead. Hearing this, Noah's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly smiled. Then I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking. Bang! Without any warning, Noah abruptly stomped on the ground, and his figure suddenly shot out. He unleashed an astonishing explosive force, and with the impact of a savage beast, he shot towards the great sage, heaven's equal. You're quite fast. The great sage, heaven's equal, stared at Noah, who was charging towards him, and a flower-like smile appeared on his face. What a pity. Compared to my somersault cloud, you're still far from it. After saying that, the great sage, heaven's equal, clenched the steel rod in his hand tightly. An extremely powerful aura surged from his body. At this moment, Noah could clearly feel it. From the great sage, heaven's equal, there was an unprecedentedly strong sense of oppression. Noah had only felt this kind of oppression from 4 people. The infinite dragon god Orpheus. The sun star spirit White Yiksha. The human's final trial Azidakaha. The hero who annihilated the demon king Rama. This seemingly weak girl in front of him gave Noah a sense of oppression that was on par with these existences. Immediately, Noah's pupils shrank slightly. At this moment, the great sage, heaven's equal, moved. Whoosh! Accompanied by a sharp sound, a steel rod pierced through space at an extremely shocking speed, directly stabbing towards Noah's chest. Noah did not even see clearly when the great sage, heaven's equal, had stabbed the Rui Jingu Bang. The steel rod had already pierced through space and was in front of him. The hair on Noah's body began to stand on end. Originally, Noah had thought that with his current level 6, with his current physical ability, he would be able to hold on for a while. Now it seemed that Noah had underestimated the great sage, heaven's equal. In terms of combat ability, the great sage, heaven's equal, was very likely above Orpheus, the 3-headed dragon, and Rama, who had the strength of 7 god slayers, through the ancient covenant. It was no wonder that the upper class of gods would send the great sage, heaven's equal, alone to confront the White Knight King, who was ranked in the top 10 of the box court. Understanding this, Noah did not hesitate to chant the spirit of words. Fear those with wings. Evil people and strong people fear me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse. Evil people will not be able to hit me. Every time Noah went to a world, he would need a period of time to adapt before he could use his authority. However, in this world, Noah's authority had already been adapted to by the world, and he did not need to adapt again. Therefore, although it had been less than a day since he returned to this world, Noah could unleash 100% of his combat ability. Understanding the threat of the great sage, heaven's equal, Noah did not hesitate to use Phoenix. Whoosh! In the next moment, Noah's figure suddenly moved half a meter to the side. The heavy steel rod was like a bolt of lightning, heavily stabbing the afterimage left behind by Noah, directly tearing it apart. He dodged it. The great sage, heaven's equal, seemed a little surprised. Obviously, in the eyes of the great sage, heaven's equal, that attack just now was enough to knock down Noah. After all, the great sage, Heaven's Equal had seized the moment when Noah entered the attack range of the Rui Jingu Bang. Then, with a speed of only 0.01 seconds, there was no opportunity or time to dodge. Unexpectedly, Noah had dodged it. Not only that, but Noah's speed had also increased to an astonishing level, and even the great sage, Heaven's Equal, could not catch him. Interesting. The great sage, Heaven's Equal's eyes began to flash with fire. It was the eyes of fire and gold. Therefore, this time, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, successfully captured Noah's trajectory. Take another strike from old son. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, laughed loudly, and the steel rod in his hand turned into a slender shadow. From top to bottom, it instantly tore through the air and smashed heavily on the head of Noah, who was moving at lightning speed. If the great sage, Heaven's Equal's Rui Jingu Bang was like a heavy hammer that could kill with a single strike, then the Rui Jingu Bang in the hands of the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was like a long whip, soft and long. Undoubtedly, it was the same weapon, but the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had actually used both hard and soft. Just this alone showed how amazing the great sage, Heaven's Equal's martial arts were. Of course, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, who was so skilled in martial arts, would definitely have an ultimate technique on the same level as the Eye of the Heart. Therefore, Noah could not dodge this attack at all. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I shall have the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power to slay dragons. A wave of crimson air billowed from Noah's body, turning into the shadow of a dragon, and shrouded Noah's entire body. Dang! Following a loud sound, the Rui Jingu Bang smashed onto the dragon's shadow, and a terrifying shockwave rippled out. Pung! The astonishing strength smashed Noah directly into the ground, causing the ground to explode. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.